The Folk of the Faraway Tree. Curious Connie comes to stay. One day, Mother came to the three children as they worked out in the garden and spoke to them. "Joe, Bessie, Fannie, listen to me a minute. I just had a letter from an old friend of mine, and I'm wondering what to do about it. I'll read it to you." Mother read the letter. "Dear old friend, please will you do something for me? I have not been well for some time, and the doctor says I must go away on a long holiday. But as you know, I have a little girl, Connie, and I cannot leave her by herself. So would you please let her stay with you until I come back? I will of course pay you well. Your three children are good and well-behaved, and I feel that their friendship will be very nice for my little Connie, who is, I'm afraid, rather spoilt. Do let me know soon. Your old friend, Lizzie Haynes." The three children listened in silence. Then Bessie spoke. "Oh, Mother, we've seen Connie once, and she was awfully stuck up and spoilt, and awfully curious, too, sticking her nose into everything. Have we got to have her?" "No, of course not," said Mother. "But I could do with some extra money, you know, and I do think that Connie might soon settle down and stop being spoilt if she lived with us. It would be good for her." "And I suppose we ought to help people if we can," said Joe. "All right, Mother, we'll have Connie, shall we, and just teach her not to be spoilt."
"We shall be able to show her the Enchanted Wood and the Faraway Tree," said Fannie.
"Yes, we used to have Cousin Dick, but now he's gone back home," said Bessie.
"We'll have Connie instead."
"If you put a little bed into the corner of my room and Fanny's, Mother, we can have her in there." Mother smiled at them and went indoors to write to her old friend to say yes, she would have Connie. The three children looked at one another.
"We'll soon tick Connie off if she starts any of her high and mighty ways here," said Bessie. "And we'll stop her poking her nose into everything too," said Fannie.
"I say, what about taking her up the Faraway Tree and letting her peep in at the angry pixie? He'll soon tick her off." The others giggled. "It'll be fun showing somebody else the Faraway Tree, and all the people there," said Joe. "I wonder what curious Connie will think of the Saucepan Man and Silky and Moonface." "And I wonder what they will think of her," said Bessie. "What a lovely name for her, Joe, Curious Connie. I shall always think of her like that now." Curious Connie was to come the next week. She was as old as Fannie, a pretty, dainty little thing, fond of nice clothes and ribbons. The children went to meet the bus. "There it is," cried Joe, "coming round the corner. And there's Curious Connie on it. Look, all dressed up as if she was going to a party." Connie jumped off the bus, carrying a bag. Joe politely took it from her and gave her a welcoming kiss. The girls welcomed her too. Connie looked them up and down.
"My, you do look country folk," she said.
"Well, that's what we are," said Bessie. "You'll look like us soon too. I hope you'll be very happy here, Connie."
"I saw Dick the other day,"
said Connie, as she walked demurely along the lane with the others.
"He told me the most awful stories."
"Dick did? But he's not a storyteller," said Joe in surprise. "What sort of stories did he tell you?"
"Well, he told me about a silly enchanted wood and a ridiculous faraway tree, and some stupid people called Moonface and Dame Washalot and Mr. What's-his-name, and a mad fellow called the Saucepan Man who was deaf," said Connie.
"Oh, do you think all those were silly and stupid?" said Joe at last.
"I didn't believe in any of it," said Connie. "I don't believe in things like that, fairies or brownies or magic or anything."
"Well, we do," said Bessie. "We love our funny friends, and we go to see them too. We did think of taking you."
"It wouldn't be much use," said Connie. "I shouldn't believe in them at all."
"Well, we'll see," said Joe. "Let's take her tomorrow," said Bessie with a giggle. "All right," said Joe, but we'd better not let her go into any land at the top of the tree. She'd never get down again."
"What land? At the top of the tree? A land at the top of the tree?"
said Connie, puzzled. "Yes," said Bessie. "You see, the Enchanted Wood is quite near here, Connie, and in the middle of it is the biggest, tallest tree in the world. Very magic indeed. It's called the Faraway Tree because its top is so far away and always sticks up into some queer magic land there, a different one every week."
"I don't believe a word of it,"
said Connie.
"All right, don't then,"
said Fannie, beginning to feel cross.
"Look, here we are home, and there's Mother looking out for us."
Soon Connie and the girls were unpacking Connie's bag. Bessie saw that there were no really sensible country clothes at all. "I suppose you're longing to show Connie the Enchanted Wood," said Mother when they went down to tea.
"Oh, do you believe in it too?"
said Connie, surprised that a grown-up should do so. "Well, I haven't seen the tree, but I have seen some of the people that come down it," said Mother. "Look, here's one of them now," said Joe, jumping up as he saw someone coming in at the front gate. It was Moonface, his round face beaming happily. He carried a note in his hand. "Hello," said Joe, opening the door. "Come in, Moonface. We've got a little friend here, the girl I was telling you about, Connie."
"Ah, how do you do?" said Moonface, going all polite. "I've come to ask you to tea with me and Silky tomorrow, Connie. I hope you can come with the others."
Connie shook hands with the queer little man. She hardly knew what to say. "Moonface, you've put Connie into a fix," said Joe, grinning. "She doesn't believe in you, you see, so how can she come to tea with a person she doesn't believe in at a place she thinks isn't there?"
"Quite easily," said Moonface. "Let her think it's a dream. Let her think I'm a dream."
"All right, I'll come," said Connie. "I'll think you're just a dream. You probably are anyway."
"And I'll think you are a dream too," said Moonface politely. "Then it will be nice for both of us. We'll see you all tomorrow, 4 o'clock in my house at the top of the tree."
And he went off, leaving Silky's invitation note in Connie's small hand. "Come on," said Joe. "We've time for a game before bed. And tomorrow, Connie, tomorrow, you shall go up the Faraway Tree." Up the Faraway Tree. The next day was bright and sunny, and Connie woke up feeling rather excited.
"Even if I don't believe in it," she said to herself, "I hope we have a good time and a nice tea."
The children usually had to do some kind of work in the mornings, even though it was holidays. Connie didn't very much like having to help to make the beds, but Mother was quite firm with her. "You will do just the same as the others," she said. "And don't pout like that, Connie. It makes you look really ugly." Connie was not used to being spoken to like this. Her mother always fussed round and spoiled her, as she was an only child. Now she was one of 4, and things were very different. When 3 o'clock came, Mother said the children might go. "It will take you some time to get up the tree, I'm sure," she said. "And please don't let Connie get wet with Dame Washalot's water." Connie looked up in astonishment.
"Dame Washalot's water?" she said. "Whatever do you mean?"
Bessie giggled.
"There's an old woman who lives up the tree who is always washing. When she's finished, she tips up her wash tub and the soapy water comes sloshing down. You have to look out for it." "I don't believe a word," said Connie, and she didn't.
"Let's go now," said Bessie.
"I must change into a pretty frock," said Connie. "No, don't," said Fannie. "Go as you are. We don't change into decent clothes when we go up the tree." "What? Go out to tea in ordinary clothes?" cried Connie. "I couldn't."
And off she went to put on a dainty white frock. They all went to the edge of the wood. There was a ditch there. "Jump over this, and you're in the Enchanted Wood," said Bessie. They all jumped. As soon as Connie was across the ditch, she heard the trees whispering, "Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh," as they always did. She felt different, as if there was magic about. It was a simply lovely feeling. They came to an enormous tree with a tremendously thick and knotted trunk. Connie gazed up into the branches.
"Goodness," she said. "Is this the Faraway Tree? How marvellous!"
"Yes," said Joe, enjoying Connie's surprise. "And at the top, as I told you, there's a different land every week. We don't always go. Sometimes the lands aren't very nice. Once there was a land of smacks. Silky and Moonface said they could hear slaps and smacks going on like pistol shots all the time."
"Gracious,"
said Connie, alarmed.
"I wouldn't like to go to a land like that. Although, of course," she added quickly, "I don't believe in such a thing."
"Of course you don't," said Joe with a grin. "You don't believe in the Faraway Tree either, do you? And yet you're going to climb it. Up we go." They swung themselves up on the lower branches. It was very easy to climb.
"What sort of tree is it?"
said Connie.
"It looks like a cherry tree to me." "Oh, look! There are some ripe cherries, just out of reach, though."
Then she found, to her surprise, that the tree was growing horse-chestnut leaves and had prickly cases of conkers. Could it really be a magic tree, then? Soon they met all kinds of little folk coming down the tree. There were brownies and pixies and a goblin or two, a few rabbits and one or two squirrels.
"Do people live in this tree?"
asked Connie in astonishment, as they came to a little window let into the big trunk. "Oh, yes, lots of them," said Joe. "But don't go peeping into that window, Connie. The angry pixie lives inside, and he does hate people to peep."
"All right, I won't peep,"
said Connie, but she meant to peep, of course.
"My shoelace has come undone,"
she called to the others.
"You go on ahead, I'll follow."
"I bet she wants to peep," whispered Joe to Bessie, with a grin. "Come on, let her." They went on to a higher branch. Connie pretended to fiddle about with her shoe, and then she climbed quickly over to the little window. She peeped inside. Oh, what fun! Oh, how lovely! There was a proper little room inside the tree, with a bed and a chair and a table. Sitting writing at the table was the angry pixie, his glasses on his nose. He had an enormous ink pot and a very small pen, and his fingers were stained with purple ink. Connie's shadow there made him look up, and he flew into one of his rages. Picking up the ink pot, he rushed to the window, opened it, and yelled loudly,
"Peeping again! Everybody peeps in at my window! Everybody! I won't have it! I really won't have it!"
He emptied the ink pot all over the alarmed Connie. The ink fell in great spots on her frock and on her cheeks and hands. She was in a terrible mess.
"Joe! Bessie! Come and help me!"
sobbed Connie, crying tears of rage and grief down her ink-smudged cheeks. The angry pixie suddenly looked surprised and a little ashamed.
"Oh, are you a friend of Joe's?"
he asked.
"Why didn't you say so? I would have shouted at you for peeping, but I wouldn't have thrown ink at you. Really, I wouldn't. Joe should have warned you not to peep."
"I did," said Joe, appearing at the window too. "It's her own fault." "My, you do look a mess, Connie." Angry and sulky, Connie went on up the tree by herself. Joe suddenly heard a sound he knew very well, and he yelled loudly, "Hi, Connie, look out! I can hear Dame Washalot's water coming down the tree. Look out!" Connie was just about to answer that she didn't believe in Dame Washalot, when a perfect cascade of dirty, soapy water came splashing down and soaked her from head to foot. The others had all ducked under broad boughs and hadn't a drop of water on them. Joe began to laugh when he saw Connie. The little girl burst into tears again.
"Let me go home! Let me go home!" she wept. "I hate your faraway tree! I hate all the people in it! Let me go home!"
A silvery voice called down the tree.
"Who is in trouble? Come up and I'll help you.
It's dear little Silky, said Bessie. Come on, Connie. She'll get you dry again. Connie meets a few people.
I don't want to see any more of the horrid people who live in this tree,
wept poor Connie. But Joe took her firmly by the elbow and pushed her up a broad bough to where a yellow door stood open in the tree. In the doorway was the prettiest little elf it was possible to see. She had hair that stood out round her head like a golden mist, as fine as silk. She held out her hand to Connie.
Poor child, did you get caught in Dame Washalot's water? Let me dry you.
Connie couldn't help liking this pretty little elf. How dainty she was in her shining frock, and what tiny feet and hands she had. Silky drew her into her tidy little house. She took a towel from a peg and began to dry Connie. The others told her who she was.
Yes, I know, said Silky. We're going up to Moonface's house to tea. He said he would ask Mr. What's-his-name too, but I don't expect he'll come, because I heard him snoring in his deck chair as usual a little time ago.
Mr. Who?
asked Connie.
Mr. What's-his-name, said Silky. He doesn't know his name, nor does anyone else, so we call him What's-his-name.
There suddenly came a curious noise of clanging and jingling. Connie looked alarmed. It sounded as if 100 saucepans and kettles were all falling together. Then a voice came floating down the tree, and the children grinned.
2 books for a bookworm, 2 butts for a goat, 2 winks for a winkle who can't sing a note.
What a very silly song, said Connie.
Yes, isn't it, said Joe. It's the kind the old Saucepan Man always sings. Anyone can make up a song like that.
And I'm sure I don't want to, said Connie.
A most extraordinary person now came into Silky's tiny house, almost getting stuck in the door. He was covered from head to foot with saucepans, kettles and pans, which were tied round him with string. Connie stared at him in the greatest surprise. His hat was a very big saucepan, so big that it hid most of his face. Connie could see a wide grin, but that was about all.
"Who's this funny creature?"
said Connie in a loud and rather rude voice. Now, the Saucepan Man was deaf, and he didn't usually hear what was said, but this time he did, and he didn't like it. He tilted back his saucepan hat and stared at Connie.
"Who's this dirty little girl?"
he said, in a voice just as loud as Connie's. Connie went red. "This is Connie," said Joe. He turned to Connie. "This is Saucepan, a great friend of ours."
"Why is she so dirty?"
asked Saucepan, looking at Connie's ink-stained dress and dirty face.
"Is she always like that?"
Connie was furious.
"Go away,"
she said angrily.
"Yes, it's a very nice day,"
said the Saucepan Man politely, going suddenly deaf.
"Don't stay here and stare,"
shouted Connie.
"Mind that stare,"
said the Saucepan Man, looking round.
"Can't see any."
"Is he mad?"
Connie asked Joe in a rage. And the others were laughing at this queer conversation. "No, he isn't mad," said Joe. "He's just deaf, so he keeps making mistakes."
"That's right," said the Saucepan Man. "Cakes, plenty of them, waiting for us at Moonface's."
Joe gave it up. "We'd better go up there," he said. "It's past 4 o'clock."
"I hope that awful Saucepan Man isn't coming with us," said Connie.
"I hope this nasty little girl isn't coming with us," said Saucepan.
"Now, now, now," said Silky, patting the Saucepan Man on one of his kettles. "Don't get cross. It only makes things worse." They all began to climb the tree again, the Saucepan Man making a frightful noise. At last they came almost to the top. Connie was amazed when she looked down. Far below them waved the tops of other trees. "Here we are," said Joe, banging on a door. It flew open and Moonface looked out, his big round face one large smile.
"I thought you were never coming," he said. "You are late."
"We've brought this dirty little girl," said Saucepan.
Moonface looked at her.
She does look a bit dirty," he said. "Never mind. Come along in and we'll have a good tea. I've got some hot cold goodies."
Whatever are they?
said Connie, and even the others hadn't heard of them. They all went into Moonface's extraordinary house. In the middle was a large hole with a pile of coloured cushions by it. All the furniture was curved to fit the roundness of the tree trunk. There was a curious curved bed, a curved sofa, and a curved stove and chairs.
"It's very exciting,"
said Connie, looking round.
"What's that hole in the middle?"
Nobody answered. They were too busy looking at the lovely tea Moonface had put ready on the curved table.
"What's this hole?"
demanded Connie again, but no one bothered about her. She felt so curious that she went to the edge and put her foot in it to see if there were any steps. She suddenly lost her balance and sat down with a bump. Then, oh my goodness, she began to slide away at top speed down the hole that ran inside the tree right to the very bottom. "Where's Connie?" said Joe, suddenly looking round.
"Not here. That's good," said Saucepan.
"She must have fallen down the slippery slip," said Silky. "Oh, poor Connie!" Tea with Moonface. Usually, people who used the slippery slip had a cushion to sit on, but Connie hadn't. She slid down and down, round and round, faster and faster. She came to the bottom of the tree, and her feet touched a little trap-door set in the side there. It flew open, and Connie shot out, landing on a soft tuft of moss which the little folk grew there especially. Connie sat there panting and frightened.
"If I knew the way home, I'd go," she thought, "but I don't. Oh, what's that?"
It was a red squirrel in an old jersey. He came out of a hole in the trunk where he lived.
"Where's your cushion, please?"
he said.
"What cushion?"
said Connie.
"The one you slid down on," said the squirrel.
"I didn't slide down on one,"
said Connie.
"You must have," said the red squirrel. "People always do."
"I tell you I didn't,"
said Connie, beginning to feel annoyed.
"I just slid down on myself and I got pretty warm."
She stood up and the squirrel looked at her.
"My, you've worn out the back of your frock," he said. "It's all in rags. Your petticoat is showing."
"Oh, this is a horrid afternoon,"
said poor Connie. The trapdoor shot open again, and out flew Moonface on one of his cushions. He shouted to Connie.
"I say, didn't you like my party? Why did you rush off so quickly?"
"I fell down that silly hole,"
said Connie.
"Look at the back of my frock."
"There's nothing to look at. You've worn it out," said Moonface. "Come on, I'll take you back. Look, here comes a basket. It's one of Dame Washalot's biggest ones. I borrowed it from her to go back in."
Moonface caught the big basket that came swinging down on a stout rope and threw his yellow cushion into it. He helped Connie in, tugged at the rope, and then they swung between the branches of the tree right up to his house.
"Here we are,"
he called to Joe and the Saucepan Man, who were busy tugging at the rope to bring up the basket.
"Thanks so much."
Everyone was amused to see poor Connie's dress.
"She's ragged as well as dirty,"
said Saucepan, sounding quite pleased. He didn't like Connie.
"I wonder what will happen to her next."
"Nothing, I hope,"
said Connie, scowling at him.
"Soap? Yes, you do look as if you want a bit of soap,"
said Saucepan, mishearing as usual.
"Now stop it, Saucepan," said Silky. "I've never known you so quarrelsome. Come and eat the hot cold goodies."
These were like very, very big chocolates. As soon as you had sucked the chocolate off, you came to what seemed like a layer of ice cream. This got colder and colder until it was almost too cold to bear. Then it stopped being cold, and it got hot. At first it was pleasantly warm, and then it got very hot.
"It's almost burning me," said Bessie.
"Oh, now it's gone cold again. Moonface, wherever did you get them?"
"I brought them from a witch who came down from the land of marvels today."
"The land of marvels?" said Silky. "Oh, yes, I went there last year, I remember." "What was it like?"
asked Fannie.
"Marvellous," said Silky. "There's a ladder that hasn't any top, and a tree that sings whenever the wind blows. A cat that tells your fortune."
"I'd like to go and see them," said Joe.
"You can't," said Silky. "The land moves on today. It would be dangerous to go there now, because it might move on at any minute. Then you'd be stuck in the land of marvels." "I don't believe a word of it," said Connie.
"She doesn't believe in anything magic," explained Joe. "Don't take any notice of her, Silky. She'll believe all right soon."
"I shall not," said Connie. "I'm beginning to think this is all a horrid dream."
"Well, go home to bed and dream your dream there," said Joe, getting tired of Connie.
"I will," said Connie, offended. "I'll climb down the tree myself and ask that kind red squirrel to see me home. This is a horrid party."
The silly girl went to the door, opened it, went out and banged it shut. The others stared at one another.
"Is she always like that?"
asked Moonface. "Yes," said Joe. "I'd better fetch her back."
"Oh, don't," said Moonface. "She can't come to any harm."
But Connie hadn't gone down the tree. She stood outside on a branch sulking. She thought it would be fun to climb right up to the top and look down on the forest. She climbed upwards, and, to her great astonishment, the last branch of all went straight up into a vast white cloud that hung floating over the top of the tree.
"Shall I go up there, into the cloud?" thought Connie. "Yes, I will."
To her still greater astonishment, there was a little ladder leading through the thickness of the cloud from the branch. A ladder. She climbed it, and suddenly her head poked right through into a new and different land altogether.
"Well,"
said Connie in surprise,
"so the children told the truth. There is a land at the top of the faraway tree."
She climbed up into it. There was a curious humming noise in the air. Strange people walked quickly past, some looking like witches, some like goblins. They took no notice of Connie.
"The land is moving on,"
cried one goblin to another.
"Where shall we be going to next?"
And then the land of marvels moved away from the top of the tree, and took poor Connie with it. Off to Jack and the Beanstalk. Joe, Bessie, Fannie and the others went on with their tea.
"We'd better save some for Connie, hadn't we?" said Bessie. "Let's see if she's outside, sulking."
Moonface opened the door. There was no one there. He called loudly,
"Connie! Connie!"
There was no answer.
"She's gone down the tree, I should think,"
he said. The red squirrel came in.
"I heard you calling Connie, Mr. Moonface," he said. "Well, she's gone up the ladder through the cloud. I saw her go."
"Good gracious!" cried Joe, jumping up in alarm. "Why, the land of marvels is ready to leave here at any minute. Didn't you say, Silky?"
"I'll pop up and see,"
said Moonface. He climbed to the highest branch and went up the ladder. But there was nothing to be seen except swirling, misty cloud. He came down again.
"It's gone," he said. "Connie is gone with the land of marvels."
Bessie went pale. "What can we do about it?" she said. "We're in charge of her, you know. We must find her somehow." "She's our friend," said Joe, "and although she's silly and annoying sometimes, we have to look after her and help her. How can we get to her?"
"You can't," said Moonface.
Saucepan had been trying to follow what had been said. He didn't like Connie, but he did know of a way to get to the land of marvels, and he badly wanted to tell the others. They were all talking at once, so In despair, he clashed his saucepans together so violently that everyone jumped and stared round at him. "He wants to say something," said Joe. "Come on, out with it, Saucepan." Saucepan came out with it in a rush. "I know how to get to the Land of Marvels without waiting for it to arrive here again," he said. "You can get to it from the Land of Giants, which joins on to it."
"I don't see how that helps us," said Moonface. "We don't know how to get to the Land of Giants either, silly."
"No, it's not hilly," said Saucepan. "The giants have made it flat by walking about on it with their enormous feet."
"What is he talking about?" said Bessie. "Saucepan, tell us how to get there."
"That's easy," said Saucepan, beaming round. "Same way as Jack and the Beanstalk did, of course. Up the beanstalk."
Everyone stared at Saucepan in silence. "But where's the beanstalk?" asked Joe at last.
"Where Jack lives," said Saucepan. "I know him quite well. Married a princess and lives in a castle."
"How did you come to know him?" asked Moonface.
"I sold him a lot of saucepans and kettles," said the Saucepan Man. "Come on, down the tree we go, and then to the other end of the wood."
Down the tree they went, and Saucepan set off along a narrow winding path.
"This way," he said. "We've got to get to the station."
"Station? What station?" said Joe in astonishment.
"To get the train for Jack and the Beanstalk's castle," said Saucepan. "How stupid you are all of a sudden, Joe."
They came suddenly to a small station set under a row of poplar trees. A train came puffing in, looking very like an old wooden one with carriages that the children had at home. They got in, and it went off, puffing hard, as if it was out of breath. After a while it stopped and hooted.
"Here we are," said Saucepan. "Come on, everyone."
They got out onto a tiny platform. The engine gave another hoot and went rattling off.
"There's Jack! Hi there, Jack!"
suddenly yelled Saucepan, and rushed towards a sturdy young man in the distance. They shook hands. All Saucepan's kettles and pans rattled excitedly. "What a pleasure!" cried Jack. "Who are all these people? Have they come to stay with me? I'll go and tell the princess to make up extra beds at once."
"No, don't do that," said Moonface. "We haven't come to stay. We just want to know, may we please use your beanstalk, Jack?"
"It hasn't grown this year yet," said Jack. "I forgot to plant any beans, you see." "Oh," said Joe in dismay. "What a pity. We particularly wanted to go up your beanstalk." "Well, I can plant the beans now, and they'll grow," said Jack. "They're magic ones, you know. They grow as you watch them."
"Oh, good," said Moonface. "Could you plant some, do you think? We'd be most awfully obliged."
"Certainly," said Jack. The others watched anxiously as he turned a queer collection of things out of his pockets. At last came 3 or 4 mouldy-looking beans. "Here we are," said Jack. "I'll just press them into the earth. So, and now we'll watch them grow. Stand back, please, because they sometimes shoot up at a great pace." To the Land of Giants. Everyone watched the ground in which Jack had buried the beans. At first nothing happened. Then a sort of hillock came, as if a mole was working there. The hillock split, and up came 2 beanstalks, putting out 2 bean leaves. Then yet others came, and the beanstalks grew higher and higher. "Queer," said Bessie, watching them grow and grow. "They don't even need a pole to climb up."
"Have they reached Giant Land yet?"
asked Moonface. "Can't tell till you climb up," said Jack. "I'd come with you, but I've got visitors coming, so I'd better go now." He shook hands politely all round, and was very pleased when the Saucepan Man presented him with an extra-large kettle in return for his kindness. Up the beanstalk they all went. It was not difficult, for there were plenty of strong leaf-stalks to tread on, but it did seem a very, very long way. The topmost shoots waved over Giant Land, and the children and the others rolled off them and lay panting on the ground to rest. Gracious! I couldn't have climbed any further, said Bessie. Oh my! What in the world is that, Joe?
It's an earthquake, cried Fannie. Can't you feel the earth trembling?
Saucepan laughed.
No earthquake, he said. Just an ordinary giant coming along, whose footsteps shake the ground.
The giant stopped when he came near them. He bent down, and the children saw that he wore glasses on his enormous nose. They looked as large as shop window panes.
Ah, what are these little creatures?
Said the giant in a voice that boomed like thunder.
Beetles, I should think, or ants. Most extraordinary.
He went to pick up one of them. A large dandelion, as tall as a tree, stood nearby, and Saucepan yelled to everyone, "To the dandelion! Quick! Hurry!" One of the heads floated high above them, a beautiful, ripe dandelion clock full of seeds. Saucepan shook the stem violently, and some of the seeds floated off. "Catch the stalks of the seeds and let the wind carry you away," yelled Saucepan. So each of them caught hold of a dandelion seed which floated high in the air, taking everyone with them.
"Keep together! Keep together!"
called Moonface, grabbing Silky's hand.
"We don't want to be blown apart!"
They all linked hands in pairs and floated high over Giantland, marvelling at the enormous castles there. "Look, there's the boundary between the Land of Marvels and Giantland," suddenly cried Saucepan, almost letting go his dandelion seed in excitement. "What a wall!" It was indeed a marvellous wall. It rose so high it seemed there was no end to it, and it shimmered as if it were made of water. "It's a magic wall," said Saucepan. "No giant can get in or out because it's painted with giant-proof paint. It keeps giants away, just like the smell of camphor keeps moths away."
"Well, how are we to get over the wall?"
said Moonface as they floated nearer.
"It may be giant-proof, but it looks as if it would be us-proof too."
"Oh no, we can go right through it," said Silky.
This sounded extraordinary, but Silky's words were quite true. When they reached the wall, it gave one last shimmer and was gone. The children floated right down into the Land of Marvels, where everything was the right size.
"There's the ladder without a top," said Silky, pointing. "No one has ever climbed beyond the 3,000th rung because they get so tired."
"We must get on and all hunt for Connie," said Joe. "Let's shout for her, shall we? Now, all together, shout!" They shouted, "Connie! Connie! Connie!" An old woman nearby looked crossly at them.
"Be quiet," she said, "making such a noise. It's bad enough having one child here yelling and screaming without having a whole crowd."
"Oh, have you seen a child here?" said Joe in his politest voice. "Where is she, please? We're trying to look for her."
"She went up the ladder that has no top," said the old woman, "and she hasn't come down. I hope she stays up there for good."
"Oh, bother Connie," grumbled Joe. They all went off to the shining ladder that stretched from the ground up and up and up. No top could be seen.
"I'll go," said Moonface. "I'm not tired, and you all are. I'll bring Connie down."
He went up the ladder, and the others sat down at the bottom waiting. They waited and they waited. Why didn't Moonface come? Up the ladder that has no top. Moonface had gone up a good way when he heard a miserable voice above him. It was Connie's.
"I can't climb any farther. This ladder doesn't lead anywhere. I shall have to stay here for the rest of my life,"
she sobbed. Moonface saw her feet above his head.
"Hi, Connie," he called.
She gave a shriek and nearly fell off the ladder.
Oh, is it?
she cried, and began to climb hurriedly up the ladder again. This was too much for Moonface. He caught firmly hold of one of her ankles. She screamed.
Let go! I shall bite you! Let go!
I've come to take you back home, you silly girl. Come on down, I'm Moonface.
Connie sat down on the ladder in the greatest relief. She put her arms round Moonface as he came up beside her and hugged him.
Moonface, I was never in my life so pleased to see anyone. Tell me how you got here.
No, said Moonface, wriggling away. There's no time. The others are waiting.
He made Connie climb down below him.
And if you don't go down pretty fast, I shall tread on your fingers, he said.
At last they were on the ground, and the others crowded round them. Moonface, we thought you were never coming.
Connie, are you all right?
Connie was longing to tell her adventures.
When I got here, I wandered about a bit, and I came to the cat that could tell fortunes, so I asked him to tell me mine. He told me all kinds of nasty things that would happen to me, so I smacked him hard, and he hissed at me and ran away.
You naughty girl, said Silky.
Well, he shouldn't have said nasty things to me, said Connie. Then an imp, whose cat it was, came after me with a broom and said he would sweep me up and put me in a dustbin. Horrid creature.
The others laughed. So I suppose you shot up the ladder to escape and didn't dare come down again.
Yes, said Connie, and I was so pleased to see Moonface. I don't like this land.
Well, what about going home? It's getting late, said Joe.
Oh dear, have we got to go through Giant Land again? Said Silky.
Yes, we've got to go through Giant Land, said Moonface.
They made their way to the shining wall, which disappeared as they walked through it, and reappeared as soon as they were on the other side. And there was a goblin with a bucket and a big brush, slapping giant-proof paint on the wall. This gave Moonface an idea. He asked the startled goblin if he could borrow his brush for a moment. Then he quickly dabbed a few drops of paint on himself and all the others. The places he dabbed shimmered queerly. They began to walk cautiously through Giantland to find the top of the beanstalk. Many giants were out, and some of them saw the children. They knelt down to pick them up, but they couldn't touch them. The giant-proof paint prevented them getting too near. "This is jolly good paint," said Joe.
"Look, there's the top of the beanstalk," said Silky. "Now we shan't be long."
They all climbed down it as quickly as they could, while the giants called rudely after them. They got to the ground and sighed for joy. Soon they were in the queer little train. They got out at the Enchanted Wood, said goodbye to Moonface, Silky and Saucepan, and made their way home. Joe said to Connie, "What about the Faraway Tree and the people there? Do you believe in them now?"
"I suppose I shall have to," said Connie, "but I didn't like any of them very much, except Moonface."
"Well, Connie," said Bessie, "you don't need to come with us again if you don't want to. We can leave you behind." But that didn't please Connie. No, she meant to go where the others went. She wasn't going to be left out. The Faraway Tree again. Mother wasn't very pleased to see how dirty, ink-spotted and ragged Connie's clothes were when she came back. "I shan't let you go with the others to the Faraway Tree again if you can't keep yourself clean," she said crossly. All the children were tired and fell asleep as soon as their heads touched the pillow. When Connie woke up, she remembered all that had happened the day before and wondered if she could possibly have dreamt it.
"Are we going to the Faraway Tree again today?"
she asked Joe when they were all at breakfast. Joe shook his head. "No, we've got lots of work to do. And anyway, you didn't like it, or the people there." The next 2 days it rained, but the day after shone sunny, and the sky was a lovely blue.
"Let's go to the Enchanted Wood," said Fannie. "May we, Mother?"
"Well, yes, I should think so," said Mother. I'd badly want a new saucepan, a nice little one for boiling milk. You might ask the Saucepan Man to sell me one. Here's the money."
"Oh, lovely,"
said Bessie.
"I'm coming too,"
said Connie. "You're not," said Joe. "You haven't any manners, and people don't like you. So why do you want to come?"
"Because I don't want to be left out,"
wailed Connie.
"Let me come. I'll be good. I'll have nice manners. I'll like everyone."
"Well, you won't go in that nice frock," said Mother firmly. "You must borrow an old one of Fanny's." Connie didn't want to wear Fanny's old frock, but she went to put it on. "You look sensible now," said Joe when she came back. They set off, Joe jingling the money for the saucepan in his shorts pocket. They jumped over the ditch and landed in the Enchanted Wood. At once, everything seemed magic and different. Connie felt excited again. They came to the Faraway Tree. "We'll go up on cushions," said Joe. He whistled a little tune, and the red squirrel popped out of his hole. "Now, Squirrel," said Bessie, "go up to Moonface, there's a dear, and ask him to send down 4 cushions on ropes. It's really too hot to climb up today." The red squirrel bounded up the tree. Then soon there came a rustling of leaves, and down through the branches came 4 fat cushions. "Sit on one, Connie, hold the rope tightly, and give 3 jerks," said Joe. The rope was hauled from above, and Connie went swinging upwards between the branches. She saw the tree was growing apricots that day. She picked one, and it was delicious. She thought she would pick another, but by that time the tree was growing acorns, which was most disappointing. Soon everyone was on the broad branch outside Moonface's house. He was there with Mr. What's-his-name, pulling hard at the ropes.
"Hello,"
said Mr. What's-his-name, beaming at the children. "What's-his-name, this is Connie," said Joe.
"Ah, how do you do?"
said What's-his-name.
"Is this the little girl Saucepan was telling me about? She doesn't look so dirty and ragged as he said."
"Well,"
began Connie indignantly.
"fancy Saucepan saying—"
"Now don't lose your temper," said Joe. "You did look dirty and ragged the other day. Where is Saucepan, Moonface? I want to buy something from him."
"He's gone up into the land at the top of the tree," said Moonface. "He heard there was an old friend of his there, little Miss Muffet, and he wanted to see her."
"Oh," said Joe. "Well, what land is up there today?"
"The land of nursery rhyme,"
said Moonface.
"Yes,"
said What's-his-name.
"all sorts of friendly people there."
"Let's go up and find Saucepan," said Bessie. "It would be fun."
"Oh, do let's go,"
said Connie.
"And Moonface, dear Moonface, you come too."
"Don't call me dear, Moonface," said Moonface. "You're not a friend of mine yet."
"Oh,"
said Connie, who couldn't understand anybody not liking her.
"Well, come along then,"
said Moonface, and he led the way to the topmost branch of the tree, up the little ladder that led through the cloud, into yet another land. "The land of the nursery rhyme folk," said Bessie, looking round. "I wonder where Saucepan is."
"Look," said Moonface, "that must be Jack Horner over there carrying a pie."
"Ask him where Miss Muffet is,"
said Fanny. So they went over to where a fat little boy was just about to make a hole in his pie with his thumb. "Please, where is Miss Muffet?" asked Joe.
"Over the other side of the hill,"
said Jack Horner, pointing with a juicy thumb.
"Look out for her spider.
He's pretty fierce today."
Nursery Rhyme Land.
"What did he mean? Look out for the spider. I'm afraid of spiders,"
said Connie, looking ready to cry. "You would be," said Joe.
"All the same, it may be a rather big spider,"
said Fanny. The children, Moonface and What's-his-name, walked to the hill, went up it and stood at the top. Nursery Rhyme Land was nice. Its houses and cottages were thatched, and the little gardens were gay with flowers. The children felt they knew everyone they met. A little boy hurried by, singing loudly in a clear, sweet voice.
"Are you Tommy Tucker?"
asked Bessie, "singing for your supper?"
"Of course not.
It's morning," said Tommy. I was just practising a bit." They all watched him go, and then someone else came along, crying bitterly. A bigger boy was slapping him hard. Behind the two came a thin cat, its fur wet and draggled. "Hi! Stop hitting that boy!" cried Joe. "Hit someone your own size."
"Mind your business," said the big boy. "Johnny Thin deserves all he gets."
Johnny Thin? Oh, isn't he the boy who put the cat down the well? Cried Fanny. Then you must be Johnny Stout, who pulled her out.
"Yes, and there's the cat, poor thing," said Johnny Stout.
Oh dear, I'll dry it a bit, said Bessie, and got out her hanky.
"Don't trouble,"
said Johnny Stout, giving Johnny Thin a last hard slap that sent him off howling loudly.
"I'll take the cat to Polly Flinders. She's always got a fire and warms her pretty little toes by it."
He picked up the cat and went into a nearby cottage.
"Hello! Who are these two coming up the hill?"
said Moonface.
Jack and Jill, of course,
said Bessie. And so they were, carrying a pail between them. They filled it at the well at the top of the hill.
"Oh, I do hope they don't fall down," said Fanny anxiously. "They always do in the rhyme."
Jack and Jill began to quarrel as they went down the hill.
"Don't go so fast, Jack," said Jill.
"You're always so slow,"
grumbled Jack.
"They'll fall down and Jack will break his crown again,"
said Bessie. She ran to the two children.
"Jill, let me take the handle of the pail," she said. "I can go as fast as Jack likes, and then he won't fall down."
Bessie took the pail handle, and Jack beamed at her.
"Thank you," he said. "Jill's always so slow. Come with me and I'll give you one of my humbugs. I've got a whole bag full at home."
"Oh, thank you," said Bessie. "I'd like one." She turned to the others. "I'll join you later," she said. The others came to a gate on which was painted a name, Little Miss Muffet.
"This is the place,"
said Joe.
"Hi, Saucepan! Are you anywhere about?"
The door was shut. No one came. Joe banged on the knocker. Rat-a-tat-tat. Still no one came.
"There's someone peeping out of the window," said Moonface. "It looks like Miss Muffet."
"It is Miss Muffet,"
said What's-his-name.
"Miss Muffet, what's the matter? Why don't you open the door? Where is Saucepan?"
There came a scamper of feet, and then the door opened just a crack.
"Come in quickly, all of you. Quick, quick, quick."
"What's the matter?"
asked Moonface.
"Where's Saucepan? Didn't he come?"
"Yes, he came," said Miss Muffet, "but he was rude to my spider when it suddenly sat down beside me and made me jump. He's always doing that. So Saucepan danced all round it, clashing his kettles and saucepans, and he sang a rude song that began, 2 smacks for a spider."
"Just like Saucepan," groaned Moonface. "Well, what happened?"
"The spider pounced on Saucepan,"
wept Miss Muffet,
"and carried him away to his home. It's a sort of cave in the ground with a door of web. No one can get through it except the spider."
"We must go and talk to it," said Moonface. "Come on, all of you."
So off they went and found the cave. A door of thick grey web closed it. From inside came a mournful voice.
2 smacks for a spider, 2 slaps on his nose, 2 whacks on his ankles, hi tiddly toes."
"That's Saucepan,"
whispered Miss Muffet.
"Oh, look out! There's the spider!"
Miss Muffet's spider.
"There's the spider! Here he comes!"
cried everyone. And there the spider certainly was. He was very large, had 8 eyes to see with and 8 legs to walk with. He wore a blue and red scarf round his neck, and he sneezed as he came.
Achoo! Achoo! Oh, bother this cold. No sooner do I lose one cold than I get another.
He suddenly saw the little company of 6.
"What do you want?"
he said. Moonface went forward boldly, looking far braver than he felt.
"We've come to tell you to set our friend free," he said. "Open that webby door at once."
"I certainly shan't," said the spider. "He wants a lesson."
"Then we shall slash it to bits,"
said Moonface.
"Try if you like," said the spider. "You'll be sorry, that's all I can say."
Moonface marched to a nearby hedge and cut out some stout sticks. He gave one to Joe, one to What's-his-name, and another to Fannie. They slashed at the webby door, but it stuck to their sticks and wound itself all round them. They tried to get it off, but the web stuck to them too, fastening itself round their legs and arms. The spider got up and pushed Joe, Moonface, Fannie, and What's-his-name into a heap together, and then rolled them up in grey web so that they were caught like flies. Then he bundled them into his cave and sat down to spin another webby door.
"Achoo!"
sneezed the spider. Then he coughed. Suddenly he spied Connie and Miss Muffet.
"You come over here too, and I'll wrap you up nice and cosy in my web."
Both Connie and Miss Muffet gave a squeal and ran back to Miss Muffet's cottage as fast as they could go. When they got there, they saw Bessie coming along with Jack and Jill.
"Hello, Miss Muffet," called Jack. "Where are the other children and Moonface?" "They've been taken prisoner by Miss Muffet's spider,"
said Connie. She told them all about it, and Bessie stared in dismay.
"And he had an awful cold,"
finished Connie.
"He was coughing and sneezing just like we do." "Look out! Here he comes," said Jill.
Achoo!" said the spider as he came by. "Achoo! Bother this cold."
"Why don't you do something for it?"
said Jill. She knew the spider quite well and was not afraid of him.
"You'd better put your feet in a mustard bath," said Jack. "That's what Mother makes us do, and we have to go to bed and drink hot lemon."
"That does sound nice and comforting," said the spider. "But I've got no bed and no one to look after me, and no lemon."
"If Miss Muffet will lend you a bed and squeeze you a lemon, Jack and I will look after you,"
said Jill. Miss Muffet stared at her in horror, then swallowed hard.
"All right, he can have my spare room bed," she said. "What about a bath to put his feet in?" said Jill. "A spider has 8 feet, not 2. You haven't a big enough one."
"I've got a big bath in my cave," said the spider. "I'll go and get it."
"Certainly not," said Jack. "You mustn't go about in the open air any more with that dreadful cold. You get into bed at once. I'll fetch your bath."
But there's a webby door over my cave, and you can't possibly get through it."
"Well, tell me how to undo the door without getting caught up in it," said Jack.
"Have you got a nice big cotton reel, Miss Muffet?"
asked the spider.
"You have? Good. Give it to Jack to take with him. You'll find the end of the web thread just by the handle of the webby door, Jack. Take hold of it and pull. Wind it round the reel, and the door will unravel, just like pulling a woolen jersey undone."
"Well, I never,"
said Jill in surprise. Connie, Jack and Jill and Bessie set off and got to the spider's cave. They could hear Moonface groaning and grumbling, and Saucepan humming one of his songs.
"Look, there's the end of the web,"
said Connie. "Who's there?" called Joe from below.
"Me, Connie,"
said Connie.
"And Bessie too, and Jack and Jill come to rescue you."
Jack pulled at the thread and wound it round and round the reel. Soon the door began to fall to pieces, and the children could see Moonface, What's-his-name, Saucepan, Joe and Fannie all in a heap together, bound tightly by the sticky spider thread. They went into the cave, but Joe called out, "Don't come near us, or you'll all be messed up in this horrid web."
"I'm just going to unravel it,"
said Jack.
"Then you'll be free."
He found the end of the thread, and the 4 prisoners rolled over and over as their bonds were pulled away. At last they were free. "Oh, thank you," said Joe, sitting up. "I feel better now." Come on, let's get out of here and go home. I'm tired of nursery rhyme land. Back at Moonface's. Joe, Moonface, Saucepan and the others got to the top of the hill. They looked back, but could see no sign of the spider. "He's not coming after us," said Bessie thankfully. "Where's the hole through the cloud?" "We'll show you," said Jack and Jill. "We'd rather like to come down it with you and see the Faraway Tree." "Oh, do," said everyone. "Come and have some dinner with us." When they came to the hole in the cloud, they all slid down the ladder and branch and went to Moonface's house. They sent the red squirrel to fetch Silky. She squealed with delight to see Jack and Jill. "Hello," she cried. "It's ages since I saw you two. Do you still fall down the hill? Jack, you haven't got your head done up in vinegar and brown paper for a wonder." "No, because Bessie kindly helped me," said Jack.
"Will you make some sandwiches, Silky?" said Moonface. "We thought we'd have a picnic dinner up here. Let me see. How many are there of us?"
6 children and 4 others, counted Joe. 10. You'll have to make about 100 sandwiches. Soon they were sitting on the broad branch outside Moonface's house, eating sandwiches and biscuits and drinking lemonade. There was as much lemonade as anybody liked because, in a most friendly manner, the Faraway Tree began to grow ripe yellow lemons around them. All Moonface had to do was squeeze them into a jug and add water and sugar.
"This is a marvellous tree," said Connie, leaning back happily. "You are clever, Moonface, to make such lovely lemonade."
"Dear me, Connie seems to believe in the tree at last," said Joe.
"Yes, I do," said Connie. "I can't help it."
She shook the branch she was leaning on, and some lemons fell off and went bumping down the tree. There came a yell from below.
"Now then, who's throwing lemons at me? I should like to know. One's gone in my wash tub."
"Ooh!"
said Connie in alarm. She called down the tree.
"I'm so sorry, Dame Washalot. It was quite an accident."
"Connie's getting some manners," said Joe to Bessie. "Any more biscuits? Have another, Saucepan." "Mother's very well, thank you," said Saucepan. "I said, have another," said Joe. "You haven't asked him to sell you a saucepan for Mother," said Bessie. "Have you got a saucepan that would do for our mother?" asked Joe. "A nice little one to boil milk." "Oiled silk?" said Saucepan. "No, my mother doesn't wear oiled silk. Why should she? She wears black, with a red shawl and a red belt and a bonnet with—" "Can't we get away from Saucepan's mother?" groaned Joe. "I never even knew he had one. Wonder where she lives." Saucepan unexpectedly heard this. "She lives in the land of Dame Slap," he said. "She's her cook." "Gracious," said Bessie, remembering. "We've been to Dame Slap's land. We flew there once in an aeroplane. We had an awful time because Dame Slap put us into her school." "Do you ever see your mother?" said Joe. "Oh, yes, when I can," said Saucepan. "I believe Dame Slap's land is coming next week. I'd like you all to meet my dear old mother. She will give you a most wonderful tea." There was a silence. No one wanted to be mixed up with Dame Slap again. She was a most unpleasant person. "Well," said Saucepan, looking round, "I didn't hear anyone say, 'Thank you very much, we'd love to meet your mother.'"
"Well, you see, it's a bit awkward," said Moonface. "You see, your mother being cook to Dame Slap,
"I suppose you're trying to say that my dear old mother isn't good enough for you to meet," said Saucepan unexpectedly, and looking terribly hurt and cross. "All right, if you won't know my mother, you shan't know me." And to everyone's alarm, he got up and walked straight up the branch into the cloud and disappeared into the land of nursery rhyme.
"Saucepan, we'd love to meet your mother, but we don't like Dame Slap."
"Saucepan, come back!" But Saucepan either didn't or wouldn't hear. "We'll have to go home," said Joe. "Let us know when Saucepan comes back, Moonface. Maybe we'll all have to go and meet his mother next week.
We'll see.
Saucepan is very cross. For a few days the children did not hear anything from their friends in the Faraway Tree. On the 5th or 6th day there came a knock at the door. Joe opened it. Outside was the red squirrel, and he had a note in his paw.
For you all,
he said, and gave it to Joe.
There's an answer, please.
Joe slit the envelope and read the note out loud. Dear everybody, when are you coming to see us again? Old Saucepan came back yesterday from the land of nursery rhymes. He had been staying with Polly Put the Kettle On. He's still upset because he says we don't want to meet his dear old mother. He won't speak to any of us. He is living with the owl, and he has made up a lot of rude songs about us. Will you come and see if you can put things right? He might listen to you. He won't take any notice of me or Silky or what's-his-name, so do come. Love from Moonface. Well, said Joe, funny old Saucepan. Who would have thought he would be so touchy? Why, I'd love to meet his mother. She must be a dear old thing.
We'd better go up the tree tomorrow and tell Saucepan exactly what we think, and make sure he hears and understands us,
said Fannie.
Is that the answer, then?
Asked the red squirrel politely. Yes, that's the answer, said Joe. We'll be up the tree tomorrow. The squirrel bounded away. So the next day, off to the faraway tree went the 4 children. We'll climb up, said Joe. The tree was growing blackcurrants. It was fun to bite into them, feeling the rich, sweet juice squirt out. All of them had black mouths as they climbed. Soon they came to the owl's home. They peeped cautiously in at the window. Saucepan was there, polishing his kettles. He was singing one of his silly songs, very loudly.
2 spankings for Connie, 2 smackings for Joe, 2 scoldings for Bessie, hi tiddly-ho. 2 drubbings for Moonface, 2 snobbings for Fan, 2 slappings for Silky from the old Saucepan Man.
Gracious! He must still be in a very bad temper, said Bessie, quite hurt. And fancy talking about slapping Silky. He's always been so fond of her. On up the tree they went, leaving behind the cross old Saucepan Man. They just dodged Dame Washalot's water in time. They heard it coming. At Silky's house they knocked at the door. Moonface opened it and beamed.
Hello, so you've come all right. We were just having a cup of cocoa.
They all crowded into Silky's dear little treehouse and sat down. Silky poured them out cups of cocoa and handed round some pop biscuits. They went pop as soon as they were put into the mouth, and honey flowed out from the middle. How Connie loved them!
Saucepan is really awful, said Silky. He sings rude songs about us all day long, and all the tree folk laugh.
Yes, we heard the songs, said Joe. Not very kind of him, is it? We can't let him go on like this, said Bessie. How can we put him into a good temper and make him ashamed of himself?
I know,
said Connie unexpectedly.
Let's go down and take presents from us to his mother. Then he'll be so pleased. He'll be nice again.
Everyone stared at her.
Well, if that isn't a splendid idea, said Silky. Why didn't we think of it before? Saucepan will be so thrilled.
Yes, really, Connie, that's a fine idea, said Bessie, and Connie went red with pleasure. The others ticked her off so much that it was very pleasant to be praised for a change.
Connie's getting quite nice, Fannie said to Silky and Moonface. Now she's not an only child and has to live with us, she's different. Not so silly and selfish. You'll get to like her soon.
It's a good idea to take presents to Saucepan for his mother, said Moonface. We'll do that. What shall we take?
I'll look in my treasure bag, said Silky. And you go up to your house and see if you've anything that would please an old lady, Moonface.
Moonface went off. The others watched Silky as she turned out what she called her treasure bag. It had lots of pretty things in it.
"Here's a lovely set of buttons,"
said Silky, picking up a set of 3 made like poppy heads.
"She'd like those."
"And what about this pink rose for a bonnet?" said Bessie. It looked so real, she felt it must have a smell. It had.
"This would do beautifully for an old lady." "And here's a hat pin with a little rabbit sitting at one end," said Fannie.
Just then Moonface came back. He brought with him a tiny vase for flowers, a brooch with M on it for Mother, and a shoehorn made of silver. The others thought they would be lovely for an old lady.
"We can each take one," said Moonface. "Come on, we'll let Silky do the talking. Saucepan is fondest of her."
They all went down to the owl's house. They peeped inside. Saucepan had finished polishing his kettles and was sitting quite silent, looking gloomy.
"Go on, Silky,"
whispered Moonface. So Silky went in first, holding out the pink rose.
"Dear Saucepan, I've brought you a present to give to your mother from me when you see her,"
she said in her loudest voice. For a wonder, Saucepan heard every word. He looked at Silky and said nothing at first. Then he said,
"For my old mother? Oh, how kind of you, Silky. She'll love this pink rose."
"Quick, come on,"
whispered Moonface to the others. So they all crowded in, holding out their gifts nervously and saying,
"For your mother, Saucepan."
Saucepan put each gift solemnly into one of his kettles or saucepans. He seemed very touched.
"Thank you," he said. "Thank you very much. My mother will be delighted. It's her birthday soon. I expect she will invite you to her birthday party."
"That would be very nice," said Joe. Saucepan looked quite his old cheery self again.
"I'm sorry I sang rude songs about you. It was all a mistake," he said. "I'll go up into Dame Slap's land tomorrow and take your gifts to my dear old mother. Then you can come and have tea with her on her birthday."
"All right," said Joe. "We'd like to do that. But mind, Saucepan, we don't even want to see Dame Slap in the distance."
"You shan't," said Saucepan.
But, oh dear, they did. In the land of Dame Slap. It wasn't very long before a message came from Moonface.
"I have heard from Saucepan. He says we are to go up to Dame Slap's land tomorrow and have tea. If we go to the back door of the school, his mother will be there."
So the next day the 4 children set off. They went up the Faraway Tree and called for Silky first. She had on a pretty party frock and had washed her hair, which was more like a golden mist than ever.
"I'm just coming,"
she said, giving her hair a last brush. When they got to Moonface's, he was beaming as usual.
"Are we all ready?"
he said. "Yes," said Joe. "But for goodness sake, look out for Dame Slap. I really do feel nervous of her."
"Saucepan will be looking out for us, don't worry," said Moonface. "I expect he'll be at the top of the ladder waiting. We're sure to have a lovely tea. His mother is a marvellous cook."
They climbed up the topmost branch of the tree and came to the ladder. They all went up it and found themselves in Dame Slap's land. There wasn't much to see, only in the distance a large green house set in the middle of a great garden. "That's Dame Slap's school," said Joe to Connie.
"Who goes to it?"
asked Connie curiously.
"All the bad pixies and fairies and brownies," said Bessie. "We saw some once when we were there. Dame Slap has to be very stern or she wouldn't be able to teach them. They're very naughty." "Where's the back door?" said Connie, looking nervously round. "Let's go there, quick. I do think Saucepan might have waited for us at the top of the ladder."
"Yes, I don't know why he didn't," said Moonface, rather puzzled. "Shall we call him?"
"No, of course not, silly," said Joe. "We'll have Dame Slap after us at once. Come on, we'll find the back door. We really can't wait about any longer." So they went round the large garden, keeping carefully outside the tall wall until they came to 2 gates. One opened onto the drive that led to the front door. The other opened onto a path that plainly led to the back door.
"This is where we go,"
said Bessie, and they went quietly through the back gate. They came to the back door. It was shut. No one seemed to be about. "I suppose Saucepan and his mother are expecting us," said Joe. He knocked on the door. There was no answer. He knocked again.
"Let's go in,"
said Bessie impatiently. They pushed open the door and went into a big and very tidy kitchen. There was no one there. Connie opened the further door and peered into what seemed to be a big hall.
"I believe I can hear someone," she said. "I'll go and see if it's Saucepan."
Before the others could stop her, she had gone. No one felt that they wanted to follow. They sat down in the kitchen and waited. Connie went into the big hall. There was no one there. Then, in at a door opposite came a tall old woman with large spectacles on her long nose and a big white bonnet on her head.
"Oh,"
said Connie, beaming.
"Many happy returns of the day. Where's Saucepan? We've all come to have tea with you."
The old woman stopped in surprise.
"Indeed," she said. "You have you? And who are the rest of you?"
"Oh, didn't Saucepan tell you?"
asked Connie.
"There's Joe and Bessie and Fannie and Moonface and Silky. We did hope that Saucepan would meet us by the ladder, because we were so afraid of meeting that awful Dame Slap."
"Oh, really?" said the old woman, and her eyes gleamed behind her big spectacles. "You think she's awful, do you?"
"Well, Joe and the others told me all about her," said Connie. "They were all here once, you know, and they escaped. They were very much afraid of meeting her again."
"Where are they?"
said the old woman.
"In the kitchen," said Connie. "I'll go and tell them I found you."
She ran ahead of the old woman, who followed her at once. Connie flung open the kitchen door.
"I found Saucepan's mother," she said. "Here she is."
The old lady came into the room, and Joe and the others gave a gasp of horror. It wasn't Saucepan's mother. It was Dame Slap herself, looking simply furious. "Dame Slap!" yelled Joe. "Run, everyone!" But it was too late. Dame Slap turned the key in the kitchen door and put it into her pocket.
"So, you escaped from me before, did you?" she said. "Well, you won't escape again."
"Look here, Dame Slap," said Moonface, putting a bold face on it. "We didn't come to see you. We came to see Saucepan's mother."
"I've never in my life heard of Saucepan," said Dame Slap. "Never. It's a naughty story. I slap people for telling stories."
And she gave poor Moonface such a slap that he yelled.
"Saucepan's mother is your cook," he shouted, dodging round the kitchen. "Your cook! Where is she?" "Oh, my cook," said Dame Slap. "Well, she walked out yesterday, along with a dreadful creature who was all hung round with kettles and pans."
"That was Saucepan," groaned Joe. "Where did they go?"
"I don't know, and I certainly don't care," said Dame Slap. "The cook was most rude to me, and I gave her a good slap. So she went off. Can any of you girls cook?"
"I can," said Bessie. "But if you think I'm going to be your cook now, you're mistaken. I'm going home to my mother."
"You can stay here and cook for me till my old cook comes back," said Dame Slap. "And this girl can help you." She pointed to Fannie. "The others can come into my school and learn to work hard, to get good manners and to be well-behaved children. Go along now."
She pushed everyone but Bessie and Fannie into the hall and up the stairs to a big classroom where dozens of noisy little imps and pixies were playing and pushing and fighting. Dame Slap dealt out a few hard smacks and sent them to their seats yelling. Connie was very much afraid. She stayed close to Joe and Moonface. Dame Slap made them all sit down at the back of the room.
"Silence," she said. "You will now do your homework. The new children will please find pencils and paper in their desks. Everyone must answer the questions on the board. Anyone who gets them wrong will have to be punished."
"Oh, dear,"
groaned Silky. Connie whispered to her.
Don't worry. I'm awfully good at lessons. I shall know all the answers, and I'll tell you them too.
Now, no talking and no playing, said Dame Slap. Just work hard. I'm going to talk to my new cooks about a nice treacle pudding. If, when I come back, anyone hasn't done the homework, there will be no nice treacle pudding for any of you.
With this awful threat, Dame Slap walked out of the room. She left the door wide open so that she could hear any noise.
We must do our homework, whispered Silky to the others, or we will all go without pudding and be slapped and sent to bed. Oh dear, oh dear, oh
dear. Dame Slap's School. The more the children looked at the 3 questions on the board, the more they felt they could never answer them. Moonface turned to Connie.
Quick! Tell us the right answers. You said you were good at lessons.
Connie read the first question.
3 blackbirds sat on a cherry tree. They ate 123 of the cherries. How many were left? How can we say, unless we know how many they were in the beginning? Said Connie. What a silly question.
Joe read the next one out loud. If there are 100 pages in a book, how many books would there be on the shelf?
The questions are just nonsense,
said Moonface gloomily. They were before, when we were here, said Joe. The third question was very short. Joe read it out. Why is a blackboard?
Why is a blackboard? Repeated Silky. There is no sense to that question either.
Well, the questions are nonsense, so we'll put down answers that are nonsense, said Joe. So they put down none for the first 2 questions. The third question was a puzzler. Why is a blackboard? Joe ran out of his place and rubbed out the last 2 words. He wrote them again, and then the question read, Why is a board black? We can easily answer that, said Joe with a grin. Why is a board black? So that we can write on it with white chalk. When Dame Slap came back, they were the only people who had answered all the questions. She beamed at them.
Dear me, I have some clever children at last, she said. You have written answers to all the questions.
Then they are right? Asked Silky in wonder.
I don't know, said Dame Slap, but that doesn't matter. I don't know the answers myself.
Then Moonface undid all the good they had done by giving a very rude snort.
Pooh! What a silly school this is! Fancy giving people questions if you don't know the answers. Pooh!
Don't pooh at me like that, said Dame Slap,
getting angry all of a sudden.
Go to bed. Off to bed with you for the rest of the day. But, began poor Moonface, but... You'll turn into a goat in a minute, if you're so full of buts, said Dame Slap,
and she pushed Moonface and the others out of the door and took them to a small bedroom in which were 4 tiny beds, very hard and narrow.
Now into bed you get, and nothing but bread and water for you all day long.
She shut the door and locked it. Moonface looked at the others in dismay.
I'm sorry I made her do this, he said. Very sorry, but really, she did make me feel so cross.
Just then there came the sound of a song floating up from outside.
2 worms for a sparrow, 2 slugs for a duck, 2 snails for a blackbird, 2 hens for a cluck.
Saucepan! It must be Saucepan! Cried everyone, running to the window. Outside, far below, stood Saucepan, and with him were Bessie and Fannie, giggling.
Hi, Saucepan! Here we are!
Cried Joe.
We're locked in!
Oh, we wondered where you were, said Saucepan, grinning. Dame Slap's locked in too. Locked into the larder by sharp young Bessie here. She was just doing it when I came along to see if you'd arrived.
Arrived? We've been here ages, said Joe indignantly. A terrific banging noise came from somewhere downstairs.
That's Dame Slap in the larder,
said Saucepan. Crash, bang, clatter.
Saucepan, cried Joe, how can we get out of here? I'll just undo the rope that ties my things round me, said Saucepan. He undid it, and his kettles and pans peeled off him.
Saucepan does look funny, said Connie. I hardly know him.
Saucepan tied a stone to the end of the rope and threw it up to the window. Joe caught it.
Tie the rope end to a bed, called Saucepan. Then come down it. You can use the kettles and saucepans as steps. They're tied on quite tightly.
So Moonface, Joe, Silky and Connie climbed down and were very glad to stand on firm ground again. "How are you going to get your kettles and pans back?" said Joe.
"I can take some out of the kitchen here," said Saucepan. "They are what I gave my mother each birthday, so they are hers."
He went into the kitchen to collect them. Then he tied them all round himself, and once more became the old Saucepan Man. Crash, smash, clang! Dame Slap was getting angrier and angrier in the larder. "Dame Slap," cried Joe from outside the locked larder door, "I will ask you a question, and if you can tell me the answer, I will set you free." There was a silence in the larder. Joe asked his question. "If Saucepan takes 12 kettles from your kitchen, how long does it take to boil a cup of tea on Friday?" The others giggled. There came an angry cry from the larder.
"It's a silly question, and there's no answer. Let me out at once."
"It's the same kind of question you asked us," said Joe. "I'm sorry, but you must stay where you are till one of your school children is kind enough to let you out. Goodbye, dear Dame Slap." The children and the others went out into the garden. "Where are we going now?" asked Bessie. "Where's your mother, Saucepan?"
"She's in the land of tea parties," said Saucepan. "It's not very far. I took her there because it's her birthday. Shall we go?"
The little party set off together.
"Come on, here's the boundary between this land and the next. Jump!"
They jumped, and over they went into the land of tea parties. What a fine time they meant to have there. The Land of Tea Parties. The Land of Tea Parties was peculiar. It was made up of nothing but white-clothed tables, big and small, round and square, and all filled with the most gorgeous things to eat.
"They've got chairs set round them too," said Fannie. "Look at the little waiters," said Connie in delight. "They're rabbits."
So they were. Rabbits dressed neatly in aprons and little black coats, hurrying here and there, carrying pots of tea, jugs of lemonade, and all kinds of other drinks. "There are some people choosing tables already," said Joe, pointing. "Look, that must be a Pixie's tea party, sitting over there. Aren't they sweet?"
"And oh, do look, there's a squirrel party," said Fannie. "Mother and father and all the baby squirrels."
Soon the children began to feel hungry. There were such nice things on the tables. There were sandwiches of all kinds, stuck with little labels to show what they were. Fannie read some of them out loud.
"Dewdrop and honey sandwiches. Ooh! And here are some sardine and strawberry sandwiches. What a funny mixture." "Look at the cakes," said Connie. "I've never seen such beauties."
Nor had anyone else. There were pink cakes, yellow cakes, chocolate cakes, ginger cakes, cakes with fruit and silver balls all over them, cakes big as could be, and tiny ones only enough for 2 persons. There were jellies and fruit salads and ice creams too. Which table should they choose? There were different things at every table.
"Oughtn't we to find Saucepan's mother before we do anything?"
said Moonface. "Gracious, of course we ought," said Bessie. "Saucepan, where is your mother?"
"Over there,"
said Saucepan, and he pointed to where the dearest little old woman stood waiting, her apple cheeks rosy red and her bright eyes twinkling.
"She's got the pink rose in her bonnet, look, and the hat pin. and she's sewn the red poppy buttons on her dress, and she's pinned the M for Mother brooch in front. The only thing she can't wear are the shoehorn and the vase, and I think she's got them in her pocket. She was awfully pleased with everything."
They all went over to the little old lady and wished her a very happy birthday. She kissed them, each one, even Moonface.
"Well, I am glad you've come," she said. "I began to think something had happened to you."
"It had," said Joe, and he started to tell her about Dame Slap. But old Mrs. Saucepan was just as deaf as Saucepan himself was.
"Here you are at last," said Mrs. Saucepan to Saucepan.
"Yes, we did come fast," he agreed. "We locked Dame Slap in the larder."
"Harder?" said Mrs. Saucepan. "Harder than what?"
The children giggled. Joe went to Mrs. Saucepan and spoke very clearly. "Let's have tea. The tables are getting filled up." Mrs. Saucepan heard.
"Yes, we will," she said.
"I'd like a table with blue jellies," said Silky.
"I'd like one with pineapple and cucumber sandwiches," said Connie.
"Well, as it's Saucepan's mother's birthday, don't you think we ought to let her choose?" said Bessie. "Yes, of course," said the others, rather ashamed not to have thought of that. "Mrs. Saucepan, please choose your own table." Well, Mrs. Saucepan went straight to a big round table set with 8 chairs and sat down. And, wasn't it strange, there were blue jellies there for Silky, pineapple and cucumber sandwiches for Connie, and all the things the others wanted too. What fun they all had! There were squeals of laughter from every table. The land of tea parties was certainly a great success. The children finished up with ice cream. Then the rabbits brought round big gay boxes of crackers, and the air was soon full of pops and bangs. "We've had a glorious time," said Joe at last, "but I think we ought to go now, Mrs. Saucepan. Thank you very much for asking us here. I hope you get another job as cook somewhere soon."
"Oh, I think I shall go and live in the Faraway Tree with Dame Washalot," said Mrs. Saucepan. "She's always so busy washing, I could do the cooking for her. I could make cakes to sell too, and have a little shop there."
"Oh, that would be absolutely lovely," cried Bessie.
"We'd better go back through the land of Dame Slap very cautiously," said Moonface. "We can't go back home from this land, because it's not over the tree."
So they said goodbye to the busy little rabbit waiters and jumped over the boundary again, back into Dame Slap's land. They had to pass near the school, of course, and there was a most terrific noise of shouting, laughing and squealing. The grounds were full of schoolchildren, and what a time they were having.
"Oh, Dame Slap must be in the larder still," said Moonface. "Yes, listen, I can still hear her hammering away."
"Hadn't we better go and set her free?" said Fannie, alarmed. "She might stay there for ages and starve to death."
"Don't be silly. How can she starve when she's surrounded by food of all kinds?" said Moonface. "It's the children who will go hungry, and when they are hungry enough, they'll open the larder door and let Dame Slap out, all right? Goodness, what a temper she'll be in."
They all hurried through the land at top speed. They came at last to the ladder sticking up from the cloud below. Moonface politely and carefully helped Mrs. Saucepan down through the cloud onto the topmost branch of the tree. Everyone followed, breathing sighs of relief. "We really must say goodbye now," said Joe to the tree folk. "Shall we take Mrs. Saucepan down to Dame Washalot for you, Saucepan?"
"I'll come too," said Saucepan, hearing what was said.
So down they went, and when Dame Washalot saw Mrs. Saucepan, she was most excited. She threw her soapy arms round the old lady's neck and hugged her.
"I hope you've come to stay," she said. "I've always wanted you to live in the Faraway Tree."
"Goodbye, Mrs. Saucepan," said Bessie. "I do hope you've had a happy birthday."
"The nicest one I've ever had," said the old lady, beaming. "Goodbye, my dears, and hurry home."
In the Land of Secrets. Connie could not forget the exciting Faraway Tree and the lands that came at the top.
Joe,
She said.
do let's find out what land is there next.
All right, said Joe. We'll ask Mother if we can have the day off tomorrow. But mind, if it's a horrid land, we're not going up there. Mother said they might go up the tree the next day. I'll give you sandwiches, she told them. Connie wore old clothes without even being told. She was learning to be sensible at last. They set off soon after breakfast. They jumped over the ditch and made their way through the whispering wood till they came to the Faraway Tree. Up they climbed. The angry pixie was sitting at his window, which was wide open. He waved to them, and Connie was glad to see he had no ink or water to throw at her.
Going up to the Land of Secrets?
He shouted to them. Oh, it sounds exciting, said Joe. What's it like?
Oh, just secrets, said the angry pixie. You can usually find out anything you badly want to know. I believe What's-His-Name wanted to find out what his real name is, so maybe he'll visit it too.
I'd like to know some secrets as well,
said Connie. What secrets do you want to know? Asked Joe.
Oh, I'd like to know how much money the old man who lives next door to us at home has got, said Connie. And I'd like to know what Mrs. Tom's at home has done to make people not speak to her, and—
What an awful girl you are, said Bessie. Those are other people's secrets, not yours.
Yes, it's horrid of you, Connie,
said Fannie. Connie was angry. She went red and glared at the others.
Well, don't you want to know secrets too? She said. You said you did.
Yes, but not other people's, said Joe at once. Connie climbed the tree, not speaking a word. She was so angry she didn't watch out for Dame Washalot's water coming down, and it suddenly swished all round her and soaked her dress. That made her crosser still, especially when the others laughed. They climbed up to Silky's house, but it was shut. They went up to Moonface's, but dear me, his door was shut too. The old Saucepan Man was not about, and neither was What's-His-Name. Nobody seemed about at all. Perhaps Saucepan's mother would know, said Bessie. So they climbed down to Dame Washalot and found old Mrs. Saucepan there.
Saucepan and What's-His-Name have both gone up into the Land of Secrets, she told them. But I don't know about Silky and Moonface. Have a bun.
Old Mrs. Saucepan was already busy making all kinds of buns and biscuits, ready to open her shop on Dame Washalot's broad branch. 2 goblins were making a stall for her. The children took their buns with thanks. They were delicious. What shall we do now? Asked Joe.
We might as well go up into the Land of Secrets, find the others, and have our picnic with them,
said Fannie.
Yes,
said Connie, who was dying to go up into this new land.
I won't try to find out your secrets. I promise I won't.
I don't know if I trust you, said Joe, but we can't go without you. I wonder if old What's-His-Name has found out what his real name is, said Bessie, beginning to climb the topmost branch. I'd love to know. They all went through the hole in the vast cloud and into the Land of Secrets. It was a curious land, quiet, perfectly still, and a sort of twilight hung over it. They came to a hill in which were several coloured doors, set with sparkling stones that glittered in the curious light. They must be the doors of caves, said Joe. Look, there are names on them. They were queer names. Witch Know-a-Lot, the Enchanter Wise Man, Dame Tell-you-all, Mrs. Hidden, the Wizard Tall Hat. They all sound awfully clever and wise and learned, said Joe. A tall elf came along, carrying a pair of wings. She stopped and spoke to the children. Do you know where Dame Tell-you-all lives, please? I want to know how to fasten on these wings and fly with them.
She lives in that cave,
said Bessie, pointing. Thank you, said the elf, and rapped sharply at the door. It opened and she went inside. In about half a minute, out came the elf with the wings on her back. She rose into the air and flew off, waving to the children. This is an exciting place, said Bessie. goodness, the things we could learn. Look, there's old What's-his-name coming along, said Joe suddenly. Saucepan was with him, his pans clashing as usual. Hi, What's-his-name? Called Joe. What's-his-name came up.
My name is not What's-his-name,
he said, a little haughtily.
I have at last found out what it is. It is a perfectly marvellous name.
What is it? Asked Bessie.
It is Colomulitu Marelli Porky Rollo, said What's-his-name very proudly indeed. In future, please call me by my real name.
Oh dear, I shall never remember that, said Fanny. She tried to say it, but didn't get any further than Colomuli, nor did the others. No wonder everyone calls him What's-his-name, said Bessie to Fanny. What's-his-name? Where are Silky and Moonface?
My name is not What's-his-name, said What's-his-name patiently. I have told you what it is. Please address me correctly in future.
He's gone all high-mighty, said Joe. Saucepan, where are Silky and Moonface?
Don't know, said Saucepan, and don't shout at me like that. I haven't seen them today.
Let's have our picnic here, and then go and see if Silky and Moonface have come home, said Joe. I don't think somehow we'll go about finding out secrets. This land is a bit too mysterious for me. But Connie made up her mind she would find a few secrets. She would have a bit of fun on her own. Connie in trouble. They all sat down on a flowery bank. As they ate, they watched the different visitors coming and going to the cave on the hillside. There was an old woman who wanted to ask Witch Know-a-lot the secret of youth, so that she might become young again. And there was a tiny goblin who had once done a wicked thing and couldn't forget it. He wanted to know the secret of forgetting, and that is one of the most difficult secrets in the world if you have done something really bad. The children talked to everyone who passed. It was queer, the different secrets that people wanted to know. The tiny goblin, who had once done a wicked thing, came up to the children. "Did you find out the secret of forgetting?" asked Bessie. The goblin nodded.
The wizard Tall Hat told me that if I could do 100 really kind deeds to make up for the very bad one I did, maybe I'll be able to forget a little and think better of myself. So I'm off to do my first kind deed.
"Goodness, it'll take him a long time to make up for his one wicked deed," said Joe. "Poor little goblin. It must be awful to do something wicked and not be able to forget it." A very grand fairy came flying down to the hillside. She looked rich and mighty and very beautiful. Connie wondered what secret she had come to find out. It must be a very fine secret indeed. The fairy smiled at them and went to knock on Mrs. Hidden's door.
"What do you think she wants to know, what's his name?"
asked Connie.
"Call me by my proper name and I might tell you,"
said What's-his-name haughtily. But Connie couldn't remember.
"Well, it isn't going to be much use finding out my real name if nobody is going to bother to remember it," said What's-his-name in a huff. "Saucepan, do you remember my name?"
"Shame? Yes, it is a shame," said Saucepan.
In the middle of all the explanations to Saucepan as to what What's-his-name had really said, Connie slipped away unseen. She was longing to know what secret the beautiful fairy wanted to find out. She climbed a little way up the hillside to where she had noticed Mrs. Hidden's door. There it was, a pale green one, striped with red lines and a curious pattern. It was open. Connie stood in the doorway and peeped inside. There was a winding passage leading into the hill. She crept down it. She turned a corner and found herself looking into a very curious room. It was small, and yet it looked very, very big, because when Connie looked at the corners, they faded away and weren't there. It was the same with the ceiling. There didn't seem to be any end or beginning to the room at all, and yet Connie knew it was small. She could hear Mrs. Hidden, whoever she was, speaking in a low, deep voice, but she couldn't see her.
"Oh, well, I suppose she's called Mrs. Hidden because she's hidden from our sight," thought Connie.
Connie heard the secret that the beautiful fairy wanted to know, and she heard Mrs. Hidden give her the answer. Connie shivered with delight. It was a very wonderful and powerful secret. She began to creep out of the cave, but her foot caught against a loose stone, and it made a noise. At once Mrs. Hidden called out in a sharp voice,
"Who's there? Who's prying and peeping? I'll put a spell on you, I will. If you have heard any secrets, you will not be able to speak again."
Connie fled, afraid of having a spell put on her. She came rushing down the hillside, her face very frightened. The others saw her and frowned. "Connie, surely you haven't been after secrets when we said you were not to try and find out anything," began Joe. Connie opened her mouth to answer, but not a word came out. Not a single word.
"She can't speak," said What's-his-name. "She's been listening at doors and hearing things not meant for her ears. I guess old Mrs. Hidden has put a spell on her. Serve her right."
Saucepan got up in a hurry.
"We'd better go," he said. "Mrs. Hidden is not a nice person to deal with when she's angry."
They all ran to the hole and got down it as quickly as possible. Connie was so anxious to get away that she almost fell off the topmost branch. Joe caught her dress just in time. "Look out!" he said. "You nearly went headlong down the tree. Let me go first." Connie couldn't answer. Mrs. Hidden's spell was very strong. "I say, do you suppose Silky and Moonface are still up there in the Land of Secrets?" asked Bessie. But they weren't, for as they came down the branch to Moonface's house, they heard voices and saw Silky and Moonface undoing parcels of shopping. "Oh, so you went shopping, did you?" said Joe. "We wondered where you were."
"Yes,"
said Moonface.
"We took the little red squirrel shopping and bought him a new jersey. He was terribly pleased. I say, did you go up into the Land of Secrets? Did you find out anything?"
"Yes, we found out What's-his-name's real name," said Joe.
"Oh, good," said Silky. "I've always wanted to know it. What is it, Joe?"
Joe wrinkled his forehead. "I can't remember," he said.
"What's the good of a name nobody remembers?" said What's-his-name gloomily. "It's just stupid."
"You tell me it, and I'll promise to remember," said Silky. "I'll write it down and learn it by heart, What's-his-name. Really, I will."
What's-his-name said nothing. Silky gave him a little poke.
"Go on, What's-his-name. Tell me your name. Slowly now, so that I can say it after you."
What's-his-name shook his head and suddenly looked miserable.
I can't tell you my name," he said at last. "I've forgotten it myself. It was such a fine name, too. You'll have to call me What's-his-name just the same as before. I expect that's why people did begin to call me What's-his-name, because nobody could ever remember my real name."
"Well, it's a pity to think that the only secret we found out has been forgotten already," said Joe. "Though I suppose Connie found out a secret she wasn't supposed to know and got punished for it. Moonface, Connie can't speak. Isn't it awful?"
"Good thing," said Saucepan, hearing unexpectedly. "Never says anything sensible."
Connie opened her mouth to say something sharp, but no words came. Silky looked at her in sympathy.
"Poor Connie! Whatever can we do about it? We'll have to wait till the Land of Enchantments comes, and then go up and find someone to take the spell away."
"Why bother?" said Saucepan. "She'll be much nicer if she can't say a word. We shan't know she's there."
"Never mind, Connie," said Bessie, seeing that Connie looked really upset. "As soon as the Land of Enchantments comes, we'll take you up there and have you put right." Off to find Connie's lost voice. Mother was surprised to find that Connie couldn't speak and very much alarmed. "We'd better take her to the doctor," she said. "Oh, no, Mother, that's no use," said Joe. "It's a spell that Mrs. Hidden put on Connie for hearing something she shouldn't. Only another spell can put her right. When the Land of Enchantments comes, we will take Connie there and see if we can find someone who will give her her voice back again," said Bessie.
"She'll have to be patient till then," said Fannie.
But Connie wasn't patient. She kept opening her mouth to try and speak, but she couldn't say a word. "It's her own fault she's like this," said Joe. "Perhaps it will teach her a lesson." 3 days went by, and no news came from the tree folk. Then old Mrs. Saucepan arrived with a basket full of lovely new-made cakes for the children's mother.
"I have heard so much about you,"
she said, smiling all over her apple-cheeked face.
"I felt I must come and call on you, madam, and bring you a few of my cakes. I have started a shop up the tree and would be so pleased to serve you if I could."
"Stop and have tea with us, and we'll try your cakes," said Mother at once. She liked the little old lady very much. So Mrs. Saucepan stopped and had tea. She shook her head when she saw that Connie still could not speak.
"A pity," she said, "a great pity. It just doesn't do to poke your nose into other people's affairs. I hope the poor child will be put right soon. The Land of Enchantments will be at the top of the tree tomorrow."
Everyone sat up. "What? So soon?" said Joe. "That's a bit of luck for Connie."
"It is," said old Mrs. Saucepan. "You'll have to be a bit careful, though. It's so easy to get enchanted there without knowing it."
"Whatever do you mean?" said Mother in alarm. "I don't think I want the children to go if there is any danger."
"I'll send Saucepan with them," said the old lady. "I'll give him a powerful spell which will get anyone out of enchantment if they get into it by mistake. You needn't worry."
"Oh, that's all right then," said Joe.
"You must remember 1 or 2 things," said Mrs. Saucepan. "Don't step into a ring drawn on the ground in chalk. Don't stroke any black cats with green eyes. And don't be rude to anyone at all."
"We'll remember," said Joe. "Thank you very much. Will you tell Saucepan we'll be up the tree tomorrow, please?" Old Mrs. Saucepan left after tea, having made firm friends with Mother, who promised to send the children once a week to buy new cakes. "Cheer up, Connie," said Joe. "You'll soon get your voice back." The next day was very rainy, and Mother didn't want the children to go up the tree. But Connie's eyes filled with tears, and Mother saw how badly she wanted to go. "Well, put on your macs," she said, "and take umbrellas. Then you'll be all right. It may not be raining in the Land of Enchantments. And do remember what Mrs. Saucepan said, Joe, and be very careful." "We will," said Joe, putting on his old mackintosh. "No treading in chalk rings, no stroking of black cats with green eyes, and no rudeness from anyone." Off they went. The tree was very slippery to climb because it was so wet. Somebody had run a thick rope all the way down it, and the children were glad to hold on to it as they went up the tree. The angry pixie was in a temper that morning because the rain had come in at his window and made puddles on the floor. He was scooping up the water and throwing it out of the window. "Look out!" said Joe. "Go round the other side of the tree. The angry pixie's in a rage." Silky was not at home. Dame Washalot, for once, was not doing any washing, because it really was too wet to dry it. So she was helping Mrs. Saucepan to bake cakes on her little stove inside the tree. The children got a hot bun each. Saucepan and Silky were at Moonface's house, waiting for the children to come. "Where's what's-his-name?" said Joe.
"Gone to sleep," said Moonface. "He sat up half the night trying to remember his real name and write it down so he wouldn't forget it again. So he was very sleepy this morning. And he didn't remember his real name, of course."
"Is the Land of Enchantments up there?" said Joe, nodding his head towards the top of the tree.
"It must be," said Silky. "I've met 2 witches and 2 enchanters coming down the tree today. They don't live here, so they must have come from the Land of Enchantments."
"They come down to get the scarlet-spotted toadstools that grow in the Enchanted Wood," said Saucepan. "They're very magic, you know, and can be used in hundreds of spells."
"There goes an old wizard or enchanter now," said Silky, as someone in a tall, pointed hat went down past Moonface's door. "Shall we go now? I'm sure Connie will be glad to get her voice back." Connie nodded, but she suddenly remembered what Mrs. Saucepan had said, that she would give Saucepan a very powerful spell, so that if any of them got caught in an enchantment, Saucepan could set them free by using his spell. But she couldn't say all this, of course. So she pulled out the notebook she had been using for messages and scribbled something on one of the pages. She showed it to Joe. What about the spell that Saucepan was going to take with him? "Oh, my goodness, yes," said Joe, and he turned to Saucepan. "Did your mother give you a powerful spell to take with you, Saucepan, in case we get caught in an enchantment?"
"My gracious," said Saucepan, beginning to look all round him in a hurry. "Where did I put it? Silky, have you seen it? What did I do with it?"
"You really are a silly, Saucepan," said Silky, looking everywhere. "You know it's a spell that can move about. It's no use putting it down for a minute, because it will only move off somewhere."
The spell was found at last. It was a funny, round, red spell, with little things that stuck out all round it rather like spiders' legs. It could move about with these, and had walked off Moonface's mantelpiece and settled itself down at the edge of the slippery slip.
"Look at that," said Saucepan, snatching it up quickly. "Another inch, and it would have been down the slippery slip and gone forever. Where shall I put it for safety?"
"In a kettle, and put the lid on," said Joe. So into a kettle went the spell, and the lid was put on as tightly as could be.
"It's safe now," said Saucepan. "Come on, up we go, and be careful, everyone."
They all left their umbrellas and Macs behind, and up into the land of enchantments they went. It wasn't a twilight land like the land of secrets. It was a land of strange colours and lights and shadows. Everything shone and shimmered and moved. Nothing stayed the same for more than a moment. It was beautiful and strange. There were curious little shops everywhere where witches, enchanters and goblins cried their wares. There was a shining palace that looked as if it was made of glass and towered up into the sky. The enchanter, Mighty One, lived there. He was the head of the whole land. There were magic cloaks for sale that could make anyone invisible at once. How Joe longed to buy one. There were silver wands full of magic. There were enchantments for everything.
"Spell to turn your enemy into a spider!"
cried a black goblin.
"Spell to enchant a bird to your hand! Spell to understand the whispering of the trees!"
The spells and enchantments were very expensive. Nobody could possibly buy them, for no one in the little company had more than a few pence in their pockets. Even the cheapest spell cost a sack of gold. "Oh, look at all those pixies dancing in a ring and singing as they dance," said Bessie, turning her head as she saw a party of bright-winged pixies capering in a ring together. She went over to watch them, and they smiled at her and held out their hands.
"Come and dance too, little girl," they cried.
Bessie didn't see that they were all dancing inside a ring drawn on the ground in white chalk. In a trice she was in the ring too, linking hands with the pixies and dancing round and round. The others watched, smiling. Then Joe gave a cry of horror and pointed to the ground. "Bessie's gone into a ring! Bessie, come out, quick!" Bessie looked alarmed. She dropped the hands of the pixies and came to the edge of the ring. But alas, poor Bessie couldn't jump over it. She was a prisoner in the magic ring. "Saucepan, get out the spell at once, the one your mother gave you," cried Joe. "Quick, quick, before something happens to Bessie. She may be getting enchanted." Saucepan took off the lid of the kettle into which he had put the spell. He put in his hand and groped round. He groped and he groped, an alarmed look coming on his face. "Saucepan, be quick," said Joe.
"The spell has gone," said Saucepan dolefully. Look in the kettle, Joe. The spell isn't there. I can't get Bessie out of the magic ring.
The Land of Enchantments. Everyone stared at Saucepan in horror.
Saucepan, the spell can't be gone. Why, you put the lid on as tightly as can be,
said Silky.
Let me look.
Everyone looked, but it was quite plain to see that the kettle was empty. There was no spell there. Maybe you didn't put it into that kettle, but into another one, said Joe. You've got so many hanging round you. Look in another kettle, Saucepan. So Saucepan looked into every one of his kettles, big and small, and even into his saucepans too, but that spell was not to be found.
It's really most peculiar, said Moonface, puzzled. I don't see how it could possibly have got out. Oh dear, why didn't one of us keep the spell instead of Saucepan? We might have known he would lose it.
We're in real danger in this strange land without a spell to protect us, said Silky. But we can't run off home because we can't leave Bessie in a magic ring, and we have to try to get Connie put right. Oh dear.
We'll have to find someone who'll get Bessie out of the ring, said Joe anxiously. Let's go round the Land of Enchantments and see if anyone will help us. So they started off, leaving Bessie looking sadly after them. But the pixies took her hands and made her dance once again. The children came to a small shop at the back of which sat a goblin with green ears and eyes. In front of him were piled boxes and bottles of all sorts, some with such strange spells in them that they shimmered as if they were alive. "Could you help us?" said Joe politely. "Our sister has got into a magic ring by mistake, and we want to get her out." The goblin grinned.
"Oh no, I'm not helping you to get her out," he said. "Magic rings are one of our little traps to keep people here."
"You're a very nasty person, then,"
said Moonface, who was upset because he was very fond of Bessie. The goblin glared at him and moved his big green ears backwards and forwards like a dog.
"How dare you call me names?" he said. "I'll turn you into a gramophone that can do nothing but call rude names if you're not careful."
"Indeed you won't," said Moonface, getting angry. "What? A silly little goblin like you daring to put a spell on me, the great Moonface? You think too much of yourself, little green ears."
"Moonface," said Fannie suddenly, "don't be rude. Remember what Mrs. Saucepan said."
But it was too late. Moonface had been rude, and now he was in the goblin's power. When the green-eared little creature beckoned slyly to him, poor Moonface found that his legs took him to the goblin, no matter how hard he tried not to.
"You'll be my servant now, great Moonface," said the goblin. "Just begin a little work, please. Sort out those boxes into their right sizes, and remember, no more rudeness."
Fannie burst into tears. She couldn't bear to see Moonface doing what the nasty little goblin said.
"Oh, Saucepan, why did you lose that spell?" she wailed. "Why did you?"
"Here's a powerful-looking enchanter," said Joe, as a tall man in a great flowing cloak swept by. "Maybe he could help us." He stopped the enchanter and spoke to him. A fine black cat came out from the tall man's shimmering cloak and strolled over to Silky, blinking his great green eyes at her. "Can you help us, please?" asked Joe politely. "Some of our friends are in difficulties here." He was just going to explain when he suddenly stopped and made a dart at Silky, who was stroking the black cat and saying sweet things to it. But she mustn't. She mustn't do that in the Land of Enchantments. It was too late. She had done it. Now she had to follow the enchanter, who smiled lazily round at the little company. "A nice little elf," he said to them. "I shall like having her around." To their great dismay, the enchanter swept off, his cloak flowing out and covering Silky and the cat.
"Oh, now Silky's gone," sobbed Fannie. "First it was Bessie, then Moonface, and now Silky. Whatever are we to do?"
"Look," said Saucepan suddenly, and he pointed to a little shop nearby. On it was painted a sentence in yellow paint. come here to get the things you have lost."
"What about trying to get Connie's voice there?" said Saucepan. "Not that I want her to have her voice back. I think she's much nicer without it. But we might get it back at that shop."
The shop was kept by the same beautiful fairy who had flown to Mrs. Hidden's cave, and whose secret Connie had overheard. Connie was afraid of going to her, but Saucepan pulled her over to the shop. The beautiful fairy knew Saucepan and was delighted to see him. When he told her about Connie, she looked grave. "Yes, I know all about it," she said. "It was my secret she heard, and a very wonderful secret it was." Connie took out her little notebook and wrote in it. She tore out the page and gave it to the fairy. "I am terribly sorry for what I did," the fairy read. "Please forgive me. I haven't told the secret, and I never will. If you will give me back my lost voice, I promise never to peep and pry again, or to try and overhear things not meant for me." "I will forgive you," said the fairy gravely. "But, Connie, if ever you do tell the secret, I'm afraid your voice will be lost again and will never come back." She handed Connie a little bottle of blue and yellow liquid and a small red glass. "Drink what is in the bottle," she said. "Your voice is there. It's a good thing I didn't sell it to anyone." Connie poured out the curious liquid and drank it. It tasted bitter, and she made a face.
"Oh, how horrid!"
she cried, and then clapped her hands in joy.
"I can speak! My voice is back! Oh, I can talk!"
"It's a pity," said Saucepan. "I like you better when you don't talk. Still, I needn't listen."
Connie was so excited at having her voice back again that she talked and talked without stopping. The others were silent. They were all very worried. "Be quiet, Connie," said Joe at last. "Saucepan, what shall we do?"
"Go back and ask my mother for another spell," said Saucepan. "That's the best I can think of."
So they all went back to the hole in the clouds. But they couldn't get down it because there were so many people coming up.
"The land of enchantments must be moving away again soon," said Saucepan in dismay. "Look, everyone is hurrying back to it with their toadstools and things."
"We can't risk going down to your mother then," said Joe, more worried than ever. "If the land moves on, it will take Moonface, Bessie and Silky with it, and we shall never see them again." What in the world were they to do? Then Fanny gave such a loud scream that everyone jumped hard. "What's that? What's that sticking out of the spout of that kettle, Saucepan? Something red waving about, look!" Everyone looked, and Saucepan gave a yell.
"It's the spell! It must have crawled up the spout, and that's why we didn't see it when we looked in the kettle. It couldn't get out because the spout is too small. Those are its leg things waving about, trying to get out of the spout."
"Quick, get it out, Saucepan," said Joe.
"Bad spell, naughty spell,"
said Saucepan severely, and he poked his finger in the spout, pushing the spell right back. It fell with a little thud into the inside of the kettle. In a trice, Saucepan took off the lid, put in his hand and grabbed the spell.
"Come on, maybe we've just got time to rescue the others, Bessie first."
They rushed to the magic ring, and Saucepan stepped into it with the spell held firmly in his hand. At once the chalk ring faded away, the pixies ran off squealing, and Bessie was free. How she hugged Saucepan!
"No time to waste, no time to waste,"
said Saucepan, and ran off to find Silky. He saw the enchanter in his flowing cloak talking to a witch, and rushed up to him.
"Silky, Silky, where are you? I've a spell to set you free," cried Saucepan.
The enchanter looked down and saw the wriggling red spell in Saucepan's hand. He shook out his cloak, and Silky at once appeared. Saucepan clutched her by the hand.
"Come on, you're free. You don't need to follow him any more. He's afraid of this spell."
The enchanter certainly was. He ran off with his black cat without a word.
"Now for Moonface," said Saucepan. "Gracious, can I hear the humming noise that means this land will soon be on the move?"
He could, and so could the others. With beating hearts they rushed to the green-eared goblin's shop. There was no time to waste. Saucepan threw the red spell at the goblin, and it went down his neck.
"You're free, Moonface! Come quickly!" cried Saucepan. "The land is on the move!"
Moonface rushed after the others, leaving the goblin to try and grope the wriggling spell out of his neck. Everyone rushed to the hole that led down through the cloud. The land was shaking already, as if it was just about to move. Bessie and Fannie were pushed down quickly. Then Silky and Connie followed, almost falling down in their hurry. Then came Moonface and Joe, and last of all Saucepan, who nearly got stuck in the hole with his saucepans and kettles. He got free and fell down with a bump.
"The land's just off!"
he cried, as a creaking sound came down the ladder.
"We only just escaped in time. Goodness! Look how I've dented my kettles!"
What is wrong with the Faraway Tree? Connie was very talkative for a few days after they had been to the land of enchantments. "We'll have to take her to the land of silence," said Bessie. "Then perhaps she'll be quiet."
What's the land of silence?
said Connie. "I don't know. I only just thought of it," said Bessie, laughing.
I wonder what land is there now,
said Connie.
When are we going to see Joe?
"There's no hurry," said Joe. "You know Silky and Moonface have gone away for a bit."
They'll be back on Thursday, said Fannie. We'll go and see them then. We'll stop and buy some of Mrs. Saucepan's cakes and take them up to Moonface's for tea. Mother, can we go on Thursday?
"Yes," said Mother. "I'll make some ginger biscuits for you to take too." Thursday came. After their dinner, the children packed up Mother's lovely ginger biscuits and set off. They jumped over the ditch and landed in the Enchanted Wood. The trees were whispering together loudly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. "They seem to be louder than usual," said Joe. "They seem sort of excited today. I wonder if anything has happened." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The children walked to the Faraway Tree. There it was, enormous, its great trunk towering upwards and its wide-spreading branches waving in the wind. Joe gave a little cry of surprise. "What's happening to the tree? Look, some of its leaves are curling up, sort of withering. Surely it isn't going to shed its leaves yet." "It's only summertime," said Bessie. "I wonder what has made them go like this." There was no fruit to be seen, only withered leaves. Joe leapt onto the first branch, followed by the others, then on to the next branch and the next, but all the way up the leaves seemed to be dying. It was curious and rather alarming. The Faraway Tree was magic. Something very serious must be the matter. "That's the first sign that a tree itself is dying, if the leaves wither," said Joe. The others looked upset. They loved the Faraway Tree and all its little tree folk. The angry pixie was in his room. Joe rapped on the window, and the pixie picked up a jug of water to throw, but he put it down again when he saw it was Joe.
"Hello,"
he said.
"Are you on your way to Moonface's? He's just back."
"I say, what's the matter with the Faraway Tree?" asked Joe. The angry pixie shook his head gloomily.
"Don't know," he said. "Nobody knows. Why, it should live to be 1,000 years old, and it's only 553 so far."
No water came down from Dame Washalot. When the children got up as far as her branch, they saw her talking seriously to old Mrs. Saucepan, who was busy arranging stacks of new-made buns on her stall. Dame Washalot was saying, "I've been here on this branch for nearly 100 years, and never have I known one single leaf wither, and there's no fruit to be seen." "What do you think is the matter?" asked Joe. But neither of the old women knew. The children went on to Moonface's. He was in his curved room with Silky, but he didn't beam at them as usual as he opened the door. He looked anxious and sad.
"Hello,"
he said.
How nice to see you. We've just got back, and, oh, my, what a shock we got when we saw the tree. I believe it's dying."
"Do you think the roots want water?" asked Bessie. Moonface shook his head.
"No, it's been a wet summer, and besides, the roots go down very, very deep, right into some old caves deep down below. Jewels were once found there, but I don't think there are any now."
"You know," said Joe, looking serious, "my father says that when a tree's roots go wrong, the tree dies unless you can put the trouble right."
"But what could go wrong with the Faraway Tree's roots?" said Moonface, puzzled.
I suppose there couldn't be anyone down there interfering with them, could there?" said Joe. Moonface shook his head.
"I shouldn't think so. Those old jewel caves were closed up as soon as the tree's roots reached them."
"Still, it would be a good idea to find out if anything is damaging the roots," said Joe. "Could you send a rabbit down, do you think? He could tell you, couldn't he?"
"Yes, that's quite a good idea,"
said Moonface. He went to the door and whistled for the red squirrel. When the little fellow came, Moonface told him to fetch one of the rabbits that lived in the wood. He soon came bounding up the tree like the squirrel. It was odd to watch him. He was proud to be called for by Moonface.
"Listen, Waffles," said
Moonface, who knew every single rabbit in the Enchanted Wood.
"Do you know your way down to the jewel caves at the roots of the Faraway Tree?"
"Of course,"
said Waffles.
"but the caves are closed, Mr. Moonface. They have been for years."
"Well, we think something may be damaging the roots of the tree," said Moonface. "We want you to go down and see if there is anything you can find out. Come back and tell us as soon as you can."
Could I just go down the slippery slip for once?"
said the rabbit shyly.
"Of course," said Moonface, and threw him a cushion. "There you are. Give it back to the red squirrel at the foot of the tree."
The rabbit shot off down the slippery slip, squealing with excitement and delight.
"Isn't he sweet?" said Fannie. "I wish he was mine. I hope it won't be long before he's back. Shall we have tea, Moonface? We've brought some ginger biscuits from Mother."
They began their tea. Before they had finished, the rabbit was back, looking very scared.
"Mr. Moonface! Oh, Mr. Moonface! Look at my bobtail! Half the hairs are gone!"
"What's happened to it?"
asked Moonface.
"Well, I went down to the old jewel caves, and I heard a noise of hammering and banging," said the rabbit. "I burrowed a hole to see what the noise was, and do you know, all the caves were filled with curious little people. I don't know what they are. They saw me, and one caught hold of my tail and pulled nearly all the hairs out."
Everyone sat silent, staring from one to the other. People in the old jewel caves, hammering and crashing round the roots of the Faraway Tree. No wonder it was dying.
"We'll have to look into this,"
said Moonface at last.
"Thank you, Waffles. Your hairs will grow again. Red Squirrel, go down the tree and tell everyone to come up here. We must hold a meeting. Something has got to be done."
Down to the jewel caves. The red squirrel bounded down the tree. "Go up to Moonface's," he told everyone. "There is to be an important meeting about the Faraway Tree. Most important." Soon everyone was on their way up to Moonface's house. Dame Washalot arrived, panting. Behind her came old Mrs. Saucepan. The angry pixie came too, of course. It was such a squash in Moonface's curved room that everyone sat outside on the broad branch. Moonface addressed the meeting.
"Something very serious is happening," he said. "The Faraway Tree is dying, as you can see for yourselves. Even in the last hour or two, its leaves have curled up even more, and not a single fruit or berry of any kind is to be found from top to bottom."
"That's true," said Dame Washalot.
"We have discovered that there are people in the jewel caves at the root of the tree," said Moonface solemnly.
"Ooh!" said everyone in amazement.
"Waffles went down and saw them," said Moonface.
The rabbit almost fell off the branch with pride at being mentioned by name.
"Now,
said Moonface. "I don't think there are any more jewels to be found, but plainly there are robbers who think there may be some left. They have come after them, and are damaging the roots of the tree in their hunt for the jewels. Unless we can stop them quickly, I am afraid the Faraway Tree will die."
"What are we going to do about it?"
said the angry pixie.
"I wish I could get at those robbers."
"We'd better find out who they are first, and how many of them," said Silky. "Then we could send round the Enchanted Wood and get dozens of people to come and help us to force the robbers out of the caves."
"I will go down to the jewel caves myself and speak with them," said Moonface, his round face looking solemn. "Saucepan, will you come with me?"
"Oh, yes, of course, without doubt,"
said old Saucepan.
"I'm coming too,"
said What's-his-name. "And all of us are," said Joe, Bessie, Fannie and Connie at once. Silky nodded as well. They all meant to share in the adventure as usual.
"Where's Waffles?" said Moonface, looking round. "Ah, there you are. Waffles, please lead the way."
The rabbit nearly burst with pride. He ran down the tree and everyone followed. When they came to the ground, Waffles ran to a big rabbit hole.
"Down here,"
he said. So down they all went, down, down, down into the darkness. It was a good thing the rabbit hole was so big. Rabbit burrows in the Enchanted Wood were always on the large side because the goblins, gnomes and pixies liked to use them when it was raining. Waffles knew the way very well, of course, and here and there were queer lanterns hanging from the roof. They went on and on, groping their way, and then they heard something.
"Hark!"
said Moonface, stopping so suddenly that Joe bumped right into him.
"Hark! What is that?"
Everyone stood and held their breath, and they heard queer muffled noises coming from the depths of the earth. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom.
"That's the people I told you about,"
said the rabbit importantly.
"We're getting near the jewel caves."
"It's the robbers, all right,"
said Moonface, and his voice echoed queerly down the tunnel.
"Can't you hear their pickaxes?"
They went forward again, making as little noise as they could. Even old Saucepan hardly made a clank or a clang with his saucepans and kettles. Boom, boom, boom. The sound came nearer still. Boom, boom, boom. "They're certainly working very hard," said Joe. "Using pickaxes to break down the cave, they must be striking the roots of the tree every time."
"Here are the caves,"
said Waffles excitedly, as they turned a corner and came to a great door studded with iron and brass.
"You can't get through that door. It's locked."
"How did you get into the caves?" said Moonface. "Oh, yes, I remember. You made a burrow. Where is it?"
Waffles pointed to it with his paw. But, good gracious, out of it pointed something sharp and glittering. Whatever could it be? Moonface stepped up to see. He came back and whispered gravely,
"It's a sharp spear. The robbers plainly don't mean anyone to get into the caves again. There are 3 of these doors, I know, but the robbers will have locked them all."
"There must be someone holding the spear," said Joe. "Let's go and talk to him. Come on, Moonface. We'll tell him what we think of robbers who hurt the roots of the dear old Faraway Tree." The rabbits come to help. Joe and Moonface walked boldly up to the rabbit hole which the robbers were guarding. The shining spear moved a little, and a harsh voice cried out sharply, "Who goes there?"
"This is Joe and Moonface," said Moonface. "We have come to tell you that you are making the Faraway Tree die because you are damaging the roots."
"Pooh!" said the voice rudely. Moonface felt angry.
"Don't you care whether or not you kill a tree?"
he asked.
"And the Faraway Tree, too, the finest tree in the world?"
"We don't care a bit,"
said the voice.
"Why should we? We don't live in the tree. We are trolls who live underground. We don't care about trees."
"Trolls?"
said Moonface.
Of course, I might have guessed it.
Now go away, please, said the voice. You can't get into the caves, nor can you stop us doing what we want to. There are plenty of precious stones here still, and until we have found them all, we shall hold these caves against any enemy.
You can have all the jewels you like if only you won't hurt the roots of the tree, said Moonface desperately.
We can't help it, said the voice. The roots grow through the walls and are always getting in our way. We chop them off.
Gracious! No wonder the poor tree is dying, said Joe. Moonface, what are we to do? Moonface moved a little nearer the rabbit hole and shouted,
How did you get into the caves? The doors were always kept locked, and the brownie Longbeard had the only key.
Ha ha! Oh, we stole it from him and got in easily, said the voice with a laugh. Then we locked the doors on this side so that no one else could get in. We've been here a week now, and nobody knew until that interfering rabbit came along. Wait till we get him. We'll cook him in our stew pot.
Waffles fled to the back of the listening party, terrified.
It's all right, said Silky, stroking him. We won't let them get you, Waffles. Don't be afraid.
Moonface and Joe went back to the others.
I don't see what we can do, whispered Moonface.
Do you think perhaps we could get the rabbits to tunnel silently somewhere else? Said Joe. If only they could make a way for us, we could all pour in and surprise the trolls.
Yes, said Moonface thoughtfully. We'd better get to work at once. Where's Waffles?
Here, Mr. Moonface, said the rabbit eagerly. What am I to do?
I want you to go and round up all the biggest and strongest rabbits in the wood and get them here, said Moonface.
Right, Mr. Moonface,
said the rabbit and sped off, his white bobtail jerking up and down as he went down the tunnel. It was rather dull, waiting for the rabbits to come.
I'm hungry,
said Connie. What's-his-name gave a little giggle.
I've got some toffee shocks, he said. Do you like sweets, Connie?
Oh, yes, said Connie. What's a toffee shock? I've never heard of one before.
What's-his-name was holding out a paper bag. The others watched. They knew toffee shocks were very peculiar sweets. Connie took 2. Gracious, what would happen? She popped the sweets into her mouth and sucked hard.
It's funny, she thought. The more I suck, the bigger they seem to be. Gracious, they're getting simply enormous.
They were. They swelled up, as they always did, and filled Connie's mouth completely. Said Connie in fright, her eyes almost falling out of her head. Just as she thought she really couldn't bear it for one more moment, the toffee shocks exploded and went to nothing. The others giggled, but Connie was very cross.
What a nasty trick to play on me, she said.
Well, you should have only taken 1, not 2, said What's-his-name, wiping the tears of laughter from his eyes. 1 toffee shock is fun. 2 must be awful.
In a little while, a whole army of rabbits appeared at the back of the passage, jostling one another, headed by Waffles, who was bursting with pride again.
I've brought them, he said. Here they all are, the biggest and strongest.
Moonface told them what he wanted them to do.
We want you to make a passage right under the caves, he said, so that it comes up in the floor. The trolls won't be expecting that. Then we'll all burst through the tunnel you make when it's finished.
The girls mustn't come into this, said Joe. They had better go back up the tree with Silky. This may be dangerous.
Oh, but we want to see what happens,
said Bessie. We'll tell you what happens as soon as we know, promised Joe. So Silky and the 3 girls made their way up into the wood. The rabbits burrowed quickly and silently down into the earth, down and down and down. When they knew they were right under the centre of the jewel caves, they began to burrow up again, up and up and up. They meant to come out in the middle of the floor of the centre cave, but alas, they came to a stop. Something hard and solid was above them. They couldn't burrow into it.
What is it?
Whispered Moonface anxiously.
Let me feel.
He felt.
Of course, he groaned. The floor of the caves is paved with stone. I'd forgotten that. We can't possibly get through. Oh, I'm so sorry, rabbits. All your work has been for nothing."
Ha ha, ho ho!
Suddenly came the distant sound of laughter.
We heard you burrowing. You didn't know the floor was made of stone. Ha ha, ho ho!
"Horrid trolls,"
said Moonface, as they all made their way back down the tunnel.
"Whatever can we do now?"
The Land of Know-Alls.
"We'd better get back and tell Silky and the others we've failed," said Moonface gloomily. "It looks to me as if the poor old Faraway Tree is done for. It's very, very sad."
So they all went back up the tree. Silky and the girls were very upset to hear that the rabbits hadn't been able to get through the floors of the caves. Then everyone sat and thought, but nobody could think of any plan at all.
"It isn't that we're stupid," said Moonface. "It's just that it's impossible."
"I suppose we couldn't ask anyone in the Land of Know-All for help, could we?"
said What's-his-name.
"The Land of Know-All? Is that up at the top of the tree now?"
said Moonface, looking excited.
"Yes,"
said What's-his-name.
"There's nothing they don't know up there."
"Gracious! Perhaps they know how to get down into the caves then,"
said Moonface.
"Oh, do let's go now this very minute,"
said Connie impatiently. All right, we will, said Joe, and he got up. The rest of them wanted to go into the Land of Know-All, even the angry pixie, who didn't often go into the strange lands. They all went up the topmost branch and climbed up the yellow ladder through the cloud. They came out into the Land of Know-All. It was a small land, so small that it looked as if anyone could fall off the edge. In the very middle of it, on a steep hill, rose a magnificent gleaming palace, with so many windows that it looked like one big shining diamond. From the middle of the palace rose a tremendously tall tower. The children and the others went up 200 steps to the great front door. Then they saw about 1,000 servants lining the hall inside, all dressed in blue and silver. "What is your wish?" said the 1,000 servants, sounding like a wind whispering.
"We want to see the Know-Alls," said Moonface, feeling rather awed.
"They are in the tall tower," said the servants. One of them took the little party to what looked like a small room, but which was really a lift. He pulled a silver rope. The children and the others gasped as the lift shot up the tower. It went so very fast. At last it slowed down and stopped. The door slid open. They had come to the top of the tall tower. It was surrounded on all sides with wide windows, and the children looked out in amazement. Surely they could see the whole world from those windows. Oceans, seas, lands spread out on each side of them and lay glittering in the brightest sunshine they had ever known. Then they saw the 5 Know-Alls. They were strange, wonderful, and peculiar folk, so old that they had forgotten their youth, so wise that they knew everything. One of them spoke, and his voice came from very far away, or so it seemed. "You have come to ask for advice. You want to know how to get into the jewel caves."
"How does he know?"
whispered Connie to Joe in amazement. "Well, he's a Know-All," said Joe.
"Shh, don't talk now, listen."
Moonface knelt down before the wise Know-All and spoke earnestly.
"The Faraway Tree is dying. It is because there are trolls in the jewel caves underground, cutting the roots that give the great tree its life. How, O great and wise master, can we get down to the caves and stop them?"
The wise Know-All shut his gleaming, mysterious eyes as if he were thinking or remembering something. He opened them again and looked at Moonface. "There is only one way. Your slippery slip goes to the foot of the tree, down its centre. Bore down still further from your slippery slip, and you will come out right under the tree in the middle of its tangled roots. Then you can surprise the trolls and overcome them." Everyone looked thrilled. It was a marvellous idea.
"Thank you, O great and wise master," said Moonface joyfully. "Thank you. We will go straight away and follow your advice."
The little party bowed to the 5 strange gnolls. Then they stepped into the lift, and the servant pulled on the silver cord. "Oh!" gasped everyone as the lift moved swiftly downwards. It really seemed as if it was falling. It slowed down at last, and the children and everyone else walked out into the vast hall. Down the steps they went, and back to the hole in the cloud, feeling very excited.
"Well,"
said Moonface, when they were safely in his curved room and feeling a little more ordinary.
"Well, now we know what to do. The next thing is, how do we bore a hole down through the rest of the tree to its root? I haven't any tools big enough to do that."
"You know," said Silky suddenly, "there is a caterpillar belonging to a goat moth that bores a burrow in a tree trunk to live in. I know, because I've seen one."
"You don't surely think that a little caterpillar could burrow down this big tree?" said Joe.
"Well, if Moonface could get about 12 of them and could make them ever so much bigger, they could easily eat their way down and make a way for us," said Silky.
Moonface slapped his knee and made everyone jump.
"That's just what we will do. We can easily make the caterpillars large. Silky, you're really very clever."
Silky blushed. It wasn't often she had better ideas than Moonface, but this time she really had thought of something good.
"Now, we'll have to find out where any goat moth caterpillars are," said Moonface.
"There is one in the big elm tree, and 2 or 3 in the willows, and some in the poplars on the other side of the wood," said Silky. "I'll go and get them if you like."
She sped off on her errand, taking a big box from Moonface's curved cupboard. Joe looked at the time. "I really think we ought to go, Moonface," he said. "It's getting awfully late. We'll come back tomorrow morning and see how you're getting on."
"I shall rub the caterpillars with growing magic this evening," said Moonface, "but it will take them all night to grow to the right size. I shall set them to work after breakfast, Joe, so come then."
Joe and the girls slid down the slippery slip, shot out of the trapdoor, and made their way home.
"I can hardly wait for tomorrow," sighed Connie. "I really don't think I can."
But she had to, of course, and tomorrow came at last, as it always does. What was going to happen then? A surprise for the trolls. Next morning, immediately after an early breakfast, the 4 children set off to the Faraway Tree. "It looks almost dead already," said Joe dolefully. "I don't believe we can save it, even if we defeat the trolls today." Moonface and Silky were waiting for them in the curved room. With them were some very peculiar-looking creatures. 11 goat moth caterpillars. They were great flesh-coloured caterpillars with black heads. A broad band of chocolate brown ran down their long backs. They were enormous, like long fat snakes.
"I rubbed them with growing magic last night," said Moonface, "and they've grown steadily ever since."
The caterpillars didn't say a word. They just looked at the children with big solemn eyes and twitched their many legs.
"I think they're ready," said Moonface. "Now listen. The caterpillars are going to burrow a way for us right through the bottom part of the trunk of the tree into the heart of its roots. They're going to crawl out and frighten the trolls, who will probably run away. Then our job is to rush after them and capture them. I've sent for all the brownies in the woods to come and help us. They are ready at the foot of the tree. They are going to climb in through the trapdoor as soon as the caterpillars have gone down into the roots."
Everyone listened to this long speech and thought the plan was excellent. Moonface gave a cushion to the biggest goat moth caterpillar, who curled himself up on it. Then off it whizzed down to the foot of the tree, followed by all the others, one after another. The children gave the caterpillars a little time to burrow, and then followed them down the slippery slip. When they got to the trapdoor, they shot out and saw dozens of brownies waiting there. Moonface climbed back in through the trapdoor and looked by the light of a lamp to see what had become of the caterpillars. All he could see was a tunnel eaten out, going down and down into the roots.
"They're going fast," he said, looking out of the trapdoor. "Out of sight already! My word, fancy being able to eat wood like that!"
Soon it was time to follow them and help to surprise the trolls. Everyone but the 3 girls and Silky crept down the hole. It was dark, but everyone was too excited to mind. The girls and Silky waited impatiently by the trapdoor. The caterpillars came to the end of the enormous trunk and found themselves in a tangle of great rope-like roots. They crawled among them, with Moonface holding on to the tail end of the last one so as not to lose the way. They came out into the very middle of the biggest cave.
"No trolls to be seen,"
whispered Moonface.
"Shh! I can hear some coming now."
He and the others slipped back into the tangle of roots, but the great caterpillars went crawling on. Just as they came to the entrance of the cave, 2 trolls came in, almost falling over the caterpillars. They gave a yell.
"Oh, snakes! Run, run! Snakes!"
They ran off, screaming. The caterpillars solemnly followed, all 11 of them in a line. They met more trolls, and every one of them ran away shrieking, for they were really afraid of snakes, and they certainly thought these enormous caterpillars were some dreadful kind of snake.
"After them!"
cried Moonface, waving a stout stick in the air. The trolls were shouting to each other,
"The caves are full of snakes! Hide, hide!"
The robbers crowded into a small cave, put a great stone at the entrance and pressed against it to prevent the caterpillars from entering. When Moonface came up, he lowered his big stick and grinned round at the others.
"Our work is easy. They've shut themselves in, and we can easily make them prisoners."
"Who's there?"
called a troll sharply, hearing Moonface's voice.
"The enemy," said Moonface. "You are our prisoners. Come out now, and we will keep off the snakes. If you don't give yourselves up, we shall push away the stone and let the snakes in."
Joe giggled. It was funny to think that anyone should be so afraid of caterpillars. The creatures were quite enjoying themselves, crawling round and about, getting in everyone's way.
"We'll come out,"
said the troll's leader, after talking to his men.
"But keep off those snakes."
"Hold the caterpillars, you others," whispered Moonface. "Now, all together, heave away the stone."
The trolls came out, looking very scared. They were strange-looking folk, with large heads, small bodies, and large limbs. The brownies at once surrounded them and bound their hands behind their backs.
"We'll keep them in prison till next week, when the land of smacks comes back again," said the head brownie with a grin. "Then we'll push them all up the ladder and see that they don't come down."
They marched the frightened trolls away.
"Let's have a look round and see what damage has been done to the tree," said Moonface. "Just look. See how they've chopped that root in half, and cut this one. Oh, and spoilt that one. The poor tree! No wonder it began to wither and die."
"What can we do for it?" said Joe anxiously.
"Well, I've got some wonderful ointment," said Moonface. "I'm going to rub the damaged roots with it. You can all help, and we'll see if it does any good. It's very magic. I got it out of the land of medicines years ago, and I've still got some left. I hope it's still got magic in it."
Moonface took a little blue pot out of his pocket and removed the lid. It was full of strange green ointment. "Better send up for the girls and let them help too," said Joe. But just at that moment, the girls and Silky came rushing up, led by Waffles. The brownies had told them all that had happened, and they had come down in great delight.
"We're going to rub the damaged roots with magic ointment," said Moonface, and he held out the blue pot. The children and the others kept dipping their fingers into the pot, which, in a most magical way, never seemed to get empty. They all rushed about rubbing the ointment into the roots and came back for more.
"Well," said Moonface, after 2 hours of very hard work, "shall we take a rest and pop up to see if the tree is looking any better? I could do with a cup of cocoa or something." So they walked up through the rabbit burrows and climbed the tree. To their great disappointment, the leaves were still curled up and withered, and the faraway tree looked just as dead as before.
"I suppose the magic ointment isn't any use now," said Silky. "Poor, poor tree. Moonface, shall we have to leave it if it dies? Will it be chopped down?"
"Oh, don't talk about such horrid things,"
said Moonface. Suddenly Joe gave a shout that made them all jump. "Look! The leaves are uncurling! The tree is looking better! It really is!" It was quite true. One by one, the withered leaves were straightening out, uncurling themselves, waving happily in the breeze once more. And then, oh joy, the tree grew its fruits as usual. Everyone rejoiced that day. The folk of the Enchanted Wood came up and down to pick the fruit. Waffles the rabbit came, his eyes shining with pleasure to think he had helped to save the tree. He was dressed in the red squirrel's old jersey and was very proud of it.
"He gave it to me as a reward," said Waffles proudly. "Isn't it perfectly lovely?"
"Yes, and you look perfectly sweet," said Silky. "Come and have some coffee, you funny little rabbit." The Land of Treats. Everyone was very glad that the dear old faraway tree was all right again. The children visited every morning to pick the fruit to take home to their mother to make into pies and tarts. The bad trolls had all been taken up to the land of Smacks, which was now at the top of the tree.
"You should hear the shouts and yells that those trolls make up there," said Moonface with a grin to the children. "They're having a dreadful time. They keep on trying to escape and get down the ladder, but they can't."
"Why can't they?" asked Joe.
"Look and see,"
said Moonface, with a wider grin than before. So Joe climbed up the topmost bough, and there were the goat moth caterpillars, still simply enormous. They were curled like huge snakes, waiting for the trolls to try to escape.
"The trolls are terribly scared of them. They don't know which is worse, snakes or Smacks."
The others giggled. "What are you going to do with the caterpillars when the land of Smacks has moved on?" asked Bessie.
"Oh, change them back to their right size and take them to the trees we got them from," said Silky. "How long is this land going to stay?" asked Connie suddenly. "I hope it won't stay long, because I've got to go home soon. Mother's better, and she's coming back, so I've got to go too. I don't want to, because it's such fun here."
"Well, you ought to be glad your mother is better and ready to have you home," said Joe. "You're a selfish little girl, Connie."
"All the same, it has been such fun here," said Connie. "Moonface, what land is coming next?"
"I rather think it's the Land of Treats," said Moonface.
"The Land of Treats? What's that like?" said Connie.
"Well, it's full of treats," said Moonface. "You know, donkey rides, bran tubs, ice creams, and things like that."
"And pantomimes and clowns," said Silky.
"Gracious!" said Connie, her eyes shining.
"What a lovely land that would be to visit for the last one. I do hope it comes soon."
It did. 2 or 3 days after that, the red squirrel, dressed in his grand new jersey, arrived at the children's cottage with a message.
"Good morning," he said politely. "I'm here with a message from Moonface, and he says that the Land of Treats will be at the top of the tree tomorrow, and are you coming?"
"Of course," cried the children in delight. "Tell Moonface we'll be there."
"I will,"
said the squirrel, and bounded off. The next day, the 4 children went up the faraway tree in excitement. Moonface, Silky, What's-his-name, and Saucepan were waiting for them impatiently.
"There are elephants," said Silky. "They give you rides."
"And you can go up in a balloon," said Moonface.
Can't you, Saucepan?"
"Go to the moon? Can you really?" said Saucepan.
"Up in a balloon!" yelled everyone.
All right, no need to shout," said Saucepan. "Come on, let's go now."
He led the way up the topmost branch. The others followed. Soon they all stood in the land of treats. It looked simply lovely. Near them was a large roundabout with animals to ride, but they were live animals. How exciting! "Let's get ice creams first," said Joe. The ice cream man was standing with his little cart handing out ice creams for nothing. You could have any flavour you liked.
"He can't have got every flavour there," said Connie. "I shall ask for something he won't have and see what happens."
So when her turn came, she said,
"I want a sardine ice cream, please."
And hey presto, the man solemnly handed her one which was plainly made of sardines because she could see a tail or two sticking out of it. "Ha ha, Connie, that serves you right," said Joe. Connie had to go without an ice cream because she couldn't eat it. "Now let's go on the roundabout," said Joe. "I'm going on that giraffe."
"I shall have a lion,"
said Moonface bravely. Connie chose a nice tabby cat who stood purring, waiting for someone to mount her.
"Take your seats, please,"
called the roundabout man. Fannie chose a duck. Bessie liked the look of a brown bear. Silky chose a hen and hoped it would lay an egg. Saucepan chose a large mouse, and What's-his-name took a dog. The roundabout music began to play, and the roundabout went round and round, going faster and faster. Saucepan made his mouse move over to Connie, but this was a great mistake as Connie was riding a cat. It shot out its paw, and the mouse squealed in fright. It leapt right off the roundabout while Saucepan clung on with all his pans rattling and clanging.
"Gracious! I hope the cat doesn't eat old Saucepan as well as the mouse,"
groaned Moonface. Goodbye to the Faraway Tree. Everyone in the land of treats stood and watched Connie's cat chasing Saucepan's mouse. In and out they went, knocking over stalls of fruit and everything.
Now, the roundabout man yelled at Saucepan. "You ought to have known better than to take your mouse over to the cat. I always keep them on opposite sides of the roundabout. Don't do it again, please."
"Let's come and have a ride in a balloon," said Moonface. "We get in that basket thing below it."
They all got in, and the balloon rose into the air and took them with it. They had a wonderful view of everything. And then somebody cut the rope.
"The balloon's flying away!" wailed Connie. "What shall we do?"
"Don't be silly," said Moonface. "This is all part of the treat. We come down near the boating pool and choose a boat to go on the water."
He was quite right. The balloon floated down beside the pool. Joe got into a boat like a goldfish. The others all chose boats too. Connie's was the grandest, for it was a magnificent peacock. It spread its tail to make a sail. "Now, what next?" said Joe. "What about something to eat?" They went to a curious little counter, behind which stood a smiling pixie. You pressed a button, said what you wanted, and out it came through a little trapdoor. Joe had cold chicken, cold sausages, and salad.
"What will you have, Silky dear?"
asked Saucepan.
"Pear tart, please,"
said Silky.
"Bear tart?"
said Saucepan, astonished. Moonface got a big chocolate pudding. In fact, everyone had what they wanted. Then they went to the circus, which was most exciting, especially afterwards when anyone could have a ride on the elephants. After that, they went into a magician's room, where they saw the best conjurer anyone had ever seen. He took a couple of goldfish out of Joe's ears.
"What a place to keep goldfish, my boy,"
the magician said. Then he took a bowl from the top of Silky's head, made Joe lean over sideways, and filled the bowl with water that seemed to come out of Joe's ear. He gave the goldfish to Joe. Joe laughed in astonishment. I'll take them home to Mother, he said. Just then, a bell rang loudly.
Oh, what a pity! It's time to go, said Moonface, getting up. They turn you out of the land of treats every evening, you know.
Rather sadly, they went to the hole in the clouds and down to Moonface's. There, Connie said goodbye.
I'm going home tomorrow, she said. But I have had a wonderful time, really I have. Goodbye, Moonface, and thank you for rescuing me off the ladder that has no top. Goodbye, what's-his-name. I hope you remember your real name sometime. Goodbye, dear little Silky. It has been lovely to know you. Goodbye, Saucepan. I'm sorry you thought I was a horrid little girl.
Saucepan heard for a wonder.
Oh, you're much nicer now, he said. Much, much nicer. Come back again. You may get nicer still then.
They all went down the tree. Connie said goodbye to the little red squirrel.
You're the best little squirrel I ever knew, she said.
They went through the Enchanted Wood, and the trees whispered to Connie, "Wish-ah, wish-ah, wish-ah."
They're wishing me goodbye,
said Connie.
Oh, Joe, Bessie, Fannie, how lucky you are to live near the Enchanted Wood and to be able to go up the Faraway Tree whenever you like. I wish I did too.
So do I. Don't you?